Good afternoon, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the stream. We are back on this 4th of July. We are going to be talking about a bunch of different stuff. Of course, we're going to talk about Independence Day. How much freedom do we actually have? SCOTUS, and of course, Project 2025. Obviously, they said it's going to be several business days until we get a response, and I had to undox myself before posting it on YouTube, just in case things do get a little spicy. I don't want to get angry trolls with my phone number. That being said, we're definitely going to focus on, what do you call it? Well, yeah, the current events. We're still going to talk about SCOTUS. We haven't actually talked about, whatchamacallit? Oh, my goodness. I guess my brain's a little fried, even though it's the 4th of July, and I haven't been doing too terribly much today other than prepping for the stream, and now I'm tongue-tied. We have not talked about Palestine for some time, unfortunately. So we're going to figure out what's going on with Palestine as well. I have prepared a few scenes for us today, and we're going to discuss them, hopefully, getting our feet under us. Goodness, I just distracted today. I must be getting tired due to this heat and the humidity. It's sapping my energy. Maybe I am a vampire. Instead of a lizard person, cold-blooded, I'm a vampire, and the sun is draining. But happy White People's Independence Day. I mean, I guess we'll start off on that note then. Independence Day, which was voted upon by the Continental Congress on July 2nd and approved. The official document, the Declaration of Independence, was signed by members of the Continental Congress on July 4th, hence why we celebrate it on that day. However, the full signatories, everybody signing the finished document, and the one that got distributed and the one that had John Hancock's signature on it, would actually be signed on August 2nd. But as we all know, Declaration of Independence meant the colonies get their freedom from ye olde England, the colonists. Notice I'm specifying the colonists, not the Americans. Colonists got their independence from ye olde England. During the drafting of the Constitution, there was what is known as the Three-Fifths Compromise, where slaves were considered three-fifths of the people, and that was to contribute towards the number of House of Representatives reps they could get as a state in this newly formed government. So, when people say that our government was built upon and centered around white supremacy, that is why. And because we don't have to dog whistle right now, we don't have to pretend to be alt-right conservatives trying to get onto Project 2025's good radar, we're going to be quite honest about that. Slaves were not free. They did not get their independence from England. Or I guess technically they did get their independence from England, but they were still enslaved to now the United States of America, the former 13 colonies. And that is the day that we celebrate, which is why Juneteenth is celebrated by a majority of African Americans and has been widely adapted by other minority groups in our country, because during the Civil War is when freedom was actually achieved for all Americans, at least on paper. But it wasn't until June 19th, after the Civil War and Texas finally gave in, that the official freedom of slaves was truly recognized. So, June 19th, for those who aren't familiar, is the day that the slaves were officially free, and the 4th of July was the day that the colonies became free from England. And it wouldn't be until, the 1960s or the 70s, until indigenous peoples could even vote? No, I don't even think it was that far. We're going to have to go a bit further. It wasn't until the 1970s that women could actually open their own bank accounts, so really freedom wasn't even in that case, but I don't believe Native Americans voting rights granted in... We got On June 2nd, 1924, Congress enacted the Indian Citizenship Act, which granted citizenship to all Native Americans born in the U.S. The right to vote, however, was governed by state law, and until 1957, some states barred Native Americans from voting. So yeah, there you have it. There you have it. And this is basically the entire history of our country. In fact, the LGBTQ right to marry wasn't even until the 21st century, right? The 2000s plus. And then trans people got their rights taken away. So we're still fighting for equality on this Independence Day. More fun facts about the Independence Day. We are the most heavily incarcerated nation on Earth. Incarceration rates per capita, U.S. 531 per 100,000. Oh, it says we're only the 6th according to 2021. We were number 1 for a while. Per capita, global. Certain there's a ranking somewhere. I guess it's doing it by the Americas. Prison population total, though. The United States is 2.2 million. And the next closest country that I can see looks like it's Brazil at 548,000. Nope, China. Sentenced prisoners only. The total does not include those in pretrial detention or administrative detention. So China with 1.64 million and the Russian Federation at 681,000. Which still means America is the number 1 incarceration rate, or the most population in prison is America on this 4th of July. First to China, which is second only to the United States. China has 1.64 million and Russia has, 681,000. Although it looks like these numbers were as of 2013. Great. Can we get something? I was going to say 2024. Doesn't really matter, right? The point being is we got the most prisoners in the world, right? But we're free. Sorry. And now we are going to mass incarcerate homeless people. Correct. We are going to add to those numbers exponentially thanks to Oklahoma and the SCOTUS. Or largely, was it? Wow, now I'm getting my facts crossed here. SCOTUS decision about homelessness. That's great, but which city brought that for? I thought it was Oklahoma. The opinion overturned an appeals court ruling that applied to 9 states in the West, including California. I see. So the West, I think, okay, I see. Point being, you're absolutely right, True Steel. We're now going to incarcerate the unhoused because why wouldn't we kick people while they're down? I saw someone say that we are the most free country in the world. I was like, not by any measure. Well, we do have the freedom to buy 39 different types of ketchup. We have the freedom to choose our healthcare provider, but still not afford their access. We have all sorts of freedom for the free market to choose things. It's just, do we have the means to actually follow through on those choices? And the answer is no. Unequivocally no, unfortunately. And so when we talk about Independence Day, we really, really need to talk about the realities of our country and the fact that we are struggling as a country, as a society, really, to survive under these economic conditions, under this deregulated, best economy in the world, capitalism, stock market, hitting record numbers, and so on and so forth. The people are struggling. They can't afford food, they can't afford rent, they can't afford transportation, right? And if you can't afford those 3 things, you definitely can't afford healthcare, and you certainly can't afford education. And those are the 5 measures of freedom, right? Food, shelter, transportation, healthcare, and education. Access to those things is what makes a nation free. And ironically, it is what is guaranteed in the preamble of the Constitution which we have gone over several times, but it wouldn't be a stream if we didn't at least quote the preamble once or twice. Where is it? Really? I type just preamble and it doesn't give us the United States? Come on. I guess I'm going to have to save it so I can quickly link it in the future. But again, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America. That's freedom. Freedom, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. Again, you can't be free if you can't have your general... I mean, think about it, right? If all you do is wake up, go to work, come home, struggle to pay bills, and then repeat, are you free? Can you improve yourself? Can you educate yourself? If you're sick, can you go to the hospital? Will your job fire you for taking off too much sick time, right? If you cannot take care of yourself, you have been unable to fulfill the obligation of the general welfare and the blessings of liberty. And now if you're unhoused because you're a victim of this capitalist society, you no longer get the blessings of liberty nor the general welfare. So, this 4th of July. Yeah, well, I know... I keep getting the actual verbiage between the Declaration and the Constitution's preamble misconstrued. I get them twisted. But they say almost entirely the same exact thing. Almost entirely the same exact thing. It's slightly different. It absolutely is different, the words. But it has the same basic meaning. And, I don't want, people to be like, well, actually... You're quoting the Declaration of Independence, and so how do you think you're going to be the president one day? Like, we talk about Biden's gaffes, and he has gaffes. Don't get it twisted. He has gaffes. But listen, gaffes are one thing. Mental acuity is another. I definitely have mental acuity. I just do not have the brain, the gray matter to memorize all these different things, and I do apologize for that. That being said, happy 4th of July. Let's start focusing on enabling and empowering that Constitution of ours, specifically empowering and enforcing the preamble. So, what does all of that mean? You're just some streamer on the internet who thinks they're going to be president one day. Well, I came damn close to entering into national politics, but I was 25 and I put my foot firmly in my mouth. I didn't know I was that flexible, but I did. I managed to turn down working with the Green Party at a time where I would have had prominence within the Green Party, and that was super unfortunate. That being said, I've ran for Congress on multiple occasions. I've ran for Senate. I was invited to run for Senate by the Green Party and earned their endorsement. The problem is, in this country, when you run for office, you need money and resources. And as we discussed yesterday, the Green Party is fighting for every last cent that it can get. Right now, the Democrats are suing them and preventing them from getting even the matching $270,000, which, again, $270,000 doesn't sound like a lot for a national campaign, because it isn't. But to the Green Party, that's everything. That's enough to hire staff. At least 1 or 2 people that can help promote the Jill Stein campaign. Get more knowledge and awareness of that campaign out into the masses. Without that $270 or $1,000, it is going to be much harder for the Green Party to do its job, especially since they only have 250,000 plus members in the Green Party anyway. And we did the math. At most, with 240-ish thousand people, 250,000 people, at most they can fundraise $77 million with a $27 donation average. And as we found out, Jamal Bowman received AIPAC attacks from his opponent to the tune of $25 million in one congressional primary. That's not even the general election money that'll be spent against the Republicans. $25 million is a third of what the Green Party can even hope to raise per year. So why are we even still talking about this? Why even have the stream? Why talk about politics at all if it's so insurmountable, if it's so bleak? The reason is because it isn't. But the answer, the solution to this problem is not sexy. It's not fun. It's not protesting. It is writing your congresspeople. It is writing your elected officials. But again, that's not sexy. By all means, write a draft, copy and paste it, and send it every week. Do it for your lunch break. In fact, the videos discussing how to do that are actually live now on my political channel. What I should probably do is turn those into a playlist. And in fact, how do you start a new playlist from the channel? I guess you don't. I guess that's the answer, but that's okay. We're going to open up the video. We're going to pause the video so we're not getting a bunch of feedback while I'm talking. You're like, where's this noise coming from when I don't see it on screen? We're going to save it, create... Oh, I already did. Call to action, how and why. Look at me go. All right. So, we go back, we go to our playlists, call to action, how and why. The videos, civic engagement can transform, how to effectively write your and to find the fight to connect with your representatives start here. Perfect. So now, just give me a second. Now that I thought I didn't do this yet, so shame on me. I'm well aware. Shame on me. Go back. Oh, videos. Okay, we need to add that as well. Okay. So I forgot to add one video. That's fine. It's much better than it could have been. We'll refresh. And in fact, ladies and gentlemen, they, thems of all ages, for the first time on this channel, on SaSeshen's About page, you can now click on one button, the script for your rep or contact. Oh, so we're still going to keep the contact your rep alone, right? So it goes to the map, right? It's going to go to the map. And now the button that was script for your rep will link you to those 4 videos. Videos discussing the methods to reach out to your reps. I suggest doing this on your lunch break every single day for democracy, baby. Let's go. I wonder if I should pick a different image, though. I was telling Leah that they are going to start putting homeless people in prison, and she was appalled. An 8-year-old child understands how wrong that is. Correct. If they're raised in the correct environment, which I know for in your case is the case. But it isn't for quite a few people. And that's what's truly disturbing. I need to... contact your rep. Maybe I need to rechange it to finding your rep. Dan, hold on. If you're watching this or you're just coming here, I apologize. I thought I was ready to stream, and it turns out I was not. So I need to... what would be a good name for that? Maybe... let's see. Maybe we do... contact tutorials? I think that's correct. I think that's what we do. Contact tutorials. We'll override that slide. Just that one. We'll go ahead and save. Of course, that's not going to be 1 megabyte, so I need to go back and fix that, right? Hold on. Sorry. I'm not great at this. So resize. And there isn't a keyboard shortcut either, which is completely stupid, but whatever. I think we went with 1100. Nah, let's go 1000 then. We'll save. Thumbnail. Twitch. 1 megabyte. And tutorials. Cool. Come on, open the damn folder, you piece of garbage. All right. Officially, on this 4th of July, on SaSeshen Twitch, you are now able to go to the About Me page, click on 2 different panels, Contact Your Rep, where you'll be taken to a map where you input your address and find out who your representatives actually are. And in the second panel, right next to it, it'll be named Contact Tutorials. And there will be video tutorials explaining how you, the citizen, the viewer, the follower, the Twitcher, I don't know what just regular Twitch viewers are called, sorry, can actually effectively fight back against this corruption. You can contact your reps. And we are obviously going to be talking about more things like voting and organizing, fundraising, infrastructure, the necessities behind all those. But now you have a 2-button click. Well, I guess the tutorials are more like watching videos, but hey, in 20 minutes and 2-button clicks, you can be an effective agitator to this corrupt system we call, well, the United States government. So, that was maybe not nearly as exciting as I intended that to be, because I really didn't figure out or think about how I should script saying that. Point being, you can now do this. It is going to be super helpful, and that is literally what it takes to make a difference in this country. It may seem silly, it may seem simple, but that's because it is. Democracy is easy. It really is. It is as simple as we make it. It is as effective as we participate within it. And if for the most of us we don't participate, guess what? Democracy is pretty damn difficult. And because we haven't been participating in it, Citizens United got passed. And then SCOTUS, over the course of decades from Citizens United being passed, was able to become what it is today through the wanton corruption of the elected officials who took advantage of money being free speech to win elections, build their momentum, build their infrastructure, and take over offices all across the country. Let's see. My Congress people won't listen to me. My congressman was Jamal Bowman. I guess he is a congressman until January. So, True Steel, I haven't been ignoring you. I've just been going off on tangents because I am on the spectrum and I was trying to get out my word salad. As I become a better, more effective streamer, I'm sure that'll be easier for me to do. Congress people are not going to listen to you as an individual. I'll tell you that right now. I've written my congressperson many a time. I've written the senator. I've wrote the president of the United States. They don't give a damn about you as an individual. They don't. They never will either, because our, again, electoral processes say that they don't have to, right? Like, the unfortunate reality, the truth, is that our elected officials, from school board all the way up to the president, don't give a damn about you, and they don't have to. The only people that they have to consistently, willfully adhere to are the donors. And not even small donors, because that's usually not the majority of the donation and the war chest that these people get, but the industries and the organizations, right? So why am I encouraging you to write your congressmen and your elected officials if I am literally telling you that as an individual, it isn't effective? It is because, again, one snowflake doesn't make a difference. An avalanche destroys towns, can destroy forests, can completely reshape an entire landscape. That's not a good analogy because, snowflakes and liberals, raindrops, drops of water, grains of sand. Whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to look at. Stepping on one Lego sucks. Stepping on a bunch of Legos or a carpet full of Legos is even worse. We need to be Legos on the carpet that these idiots are standing on and stepping all over. And the more Legos we can become, the more that they step on us and more that they cannot avoid us, the more that they're going to have to clean up their act and listen to the Legos decimating their footsies. I confronted my congressman in person, the one before Bauman, Engel, and he literally looked at me and walked away. But you are correct. If the waves keep hitting a rock, it eventually erodes it. And that's my main point. That's my argument. Be the pebble, be the water, be the snowflake, be the grain of sand, right? Be the spark. And you don't. So people are on the left, especially, really love decentralized organization. It's like, well, we'll just culminate together when the time is right. Okay, well, the time was right about 30 years ago, actually during the Reagan administration, actually during the Nixon administration. If we're being honest, the time was right when this country was founded and slaves weren't granted their civil liberties. That was about the time then that we needed to spontaneously come together and fight for actual liberty. But since it's 2024, the time is most certainly now. And that actually leads us to the next 2 points, which is 2025. Now let me make sure that this stupid music is playing so we don't get dropped. Wow, it wasn't playing. So we almost got dropped. Thank goodness I paid attention. 30 minutes must be the limit. Still, that was scary. Anyway, Project 2025 is the conservative manifesto that is currently being enacted across all the states at every level of government, including industry, including the judiciary, including at the Supreme Court, Congress, and Senate levels. All right? This manifesto is basically taking all conservative ideologies, their different niche talking points, slamming them together and shoving it down everyone's throat by training, organizing, and basically, what's the word I was looking for? Agitating the various organizations in place to undermine them. The left is not. The left. Left of the Democrats. Just one one itty bitty micro dot to the left of where the Democrats are today, and further all the way left to the other end of the Overton window. Every single person that applies to include the Democrats themselves, are not. We are not organized. We are not acting in concert. We are not being cohesive. We are not pooling our resources. We are not sharing resources. We are not utilizing existing infrastructure. What we are doing is being islands of power unto ourselves. And when you have thousands of islands not working together, you basically have Germany before it became a nation state and had principalities for every single day of the year. It was extremely weak. The Holy Roman Empire, right? Maybe in a different aspect, it would be like if you only had an army full of commanders and officers and no soldiers to lead. It's gonna end up bad very, very quickly, right? It's why smaller tribes lost to the Spanish Inquisition and the colonial powers of the eras in which those invasions took place, because they did not band together. Just like the Native Americans of our own continent could have wiped out the 13 colonies in an instant. The population of indigenous North America was in the hundreds of millions, but they were engaged in their own internal conflicts and were leaving us to the wayside. Had they not done so, history would be very different. The point is, this, I guess, spontaneous working together that the left, everything left of the current Republican Party says is going to happen, that we're just going to naturally coalesce, is not happening. It's not going to happen, and it never will happen. So, we need to start taking ownership of that fact, and we need to start acting on our own behalf, building a wave of agitating that current system. Now, if that sounds like spontaneous working together, that is false. I'm talking about taking one single action daily, of course, but that one action is very disruptive. In order for us to truly be cohesive, for us to be truly revolutionary, we would have to recognize that all of our individual issues and policy concerns are united. Universal health care is tied to women's rights, which is tied to civil rights, which is tied to clean energy, which is tied to wage and labor reform, which is tied to tax reform, which is tied to every other social and social justice issue, economic issue, domestic and foreign policy. They are all tied together. And in order for us to work together, we have to recognize and embrace that fact. In the meantime, until somebody is out there that can actually bring us together under that umbrella, we can be a thorn or a Lego under the foot of our elected officials. And that's what we need to be doing. That is what I am advocating for on this channel, in my political platform. If we can't unite for common good, if we can't pull our heads out of our asses and stop trying to beat each other to death with Marxism, the Communist Manifesto, and reading the literature and doing the work and all this other crap, and just be like, listen, people have jobs, they have lives, but fundamentally we agree on the same things. Like the conservatives do, they fundamentally agree on the same things, and the only thing that they do is simply turn out to vote for their interests that are fundamentally the same. If we fundamentally turned out to vote to empower and enforce our interests that we fundamentally hold as the same, we would be able to take over, no questions asked. It would be actually pretty comical. Because the overwhelming majority of Americans are opposed to Project 2025 and MAGA Trumpism. So, I think I've hit that point home pretty hard. I really hope people start using the contact tutorials and contact your rep. I really hope that snowballs. That being said, we do have other points of discussion, and I did say we would talk about Palestine. So we'll go into a little bit of a lighter topic real quick. Since Oklahoma, the education superintendent, mandated that the Bible must be taught in all schools, isn't it interesting that it could be taught from the perspective of ancient aliens?
As the Kabbalah, Adam was created from a human-like race that already existed on Earth. There are some who believe this points to the genetic engineering of Homo sapiens, and that further manipulation of human DNA can be found in the biblical story
Love the
of
Lego
Garden of
analogy.
Eden.
Well,
let's look then at
being snowflakes
the story
only
of the Garden
ties
of Eden
into and feeds
Adam and
into
Eve,
the Republican
living,
talking points,
sort of
right?
blissfully in this Edenic garden, and then suddenly this serpent being comes to them and offers them some special food to eat.
Who is this serpent? Ancient legend tells us that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was actually a humanoid form. It stood erect, had arms and had legs, and clearly it spoke. The serpent talks to Eve and says, hey, have a piece of fruit. Eve eats, Adam too.
And suddenly they completely change into what we would call modern people who are now creating clothing, creating ornaments. They're building houses and vehicles, tools and things like that. We have, in a sense, an evolutionary leap from primitive humans to more modern humans who are more aware of themselves and their surroundings.
But this is the part that really gets me about this, right? So now we have to teach the Bible. Or Oklahoma does, and Project 2025 is going to force it if Trump becomes the president anyway, right? Genesis. In the beginning, there was nothing, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and it was good, and then night and day the first day, right? 6,000 years, all that fun stuff. The thing is, in the creation myth, when he created Adam, he also created Lilith, which isn't even being discussed in this video, which isn't being discussed in this Bible study because that chapter has been removed from the circulated Bible. I mean, how could we possibly know about Lilith anyway, right? Like, how could we possibly know about Lilith and her story if it didn't already come with the Bible at some point in time and then was passed down through the ages, right? First point. That first problem, actually. Second point, second problem, is that even when Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden and had sons, it even said in the Bible that they had to go to nearby villages to procreate. So the creation myth and that all of humanity stems from two people is already wrong. And it's not even going to be, like, the contradictions of the Bible is what I'm really trying to point out here. Never mind Lot and his daughters. Never mind the story of Job. Never mind, what's another one? Oh, the emissions like emissions like horses and endowments like donkeys, right? Sodom and Gomorrah, like, never mind all of the just blatantly you should not be teaching this to children stuff, right? The fact that God commanded the Israelites to convince tribesmen to circumcise themselves, and then while they were healing, murdered them and then took their wives and children. Like, this is literally the origin story. The ancient aliens portion of all this that we were engineered doesn't, I mean, okay, fine, Kabbalah says so, or the serpent was actually humanoid, whatever, but it doesn't, if you would really take that approach to it, which, I mean, I hope some teachers do, is that we were genetically engineered and genetically modified in Eden, which was the environment in which Adam and Eve were created and raised, or rather, Adam, Lilith, and then Eve, whatever, in this environment, and these two beings, after Lilith left, violated whatever protocol, and were then made self-aware, because that was, I guess, the main takeaway is, could this bioengineered species achieve self-awareness? And maybe that's what the serpent was, is self-awareness. Hey, you should do this. But in the Bible, it's treated as a negative, whereas perhaps the scientists were like, all right, good. Hey, let's get Jimmy in there. Let's get these humanoids to, or these bipedal ape-like creatures to eat this apple and see if it can spark some sort of neural links and some sort of cranial responses, and then they can achieve self-awareness because it's the brain fruit. I don't freaking know. I don't really care. That's not the point. The point is, if there's aliens and all this fun stuff throughout the Bible, then angels are aliens. Then the devil is aliens. Then most of the, Jesus, the resurrection. I mean, it's not too unbelievable to assume that a highly advanced race could reanimate living tissue or dead tissue and turn it into living tissue for at least a period of 7 days. So, all that to say,
According to ancient astronaut theorists, Strikingly similar creation myths exist in ancient cultures around the world. For instance, Mayan tradition describes how humans were created by a feathered serpent known as Kukulkan. And ancient Chinese stories portray the first emperor, Huangdi, as the offspring of a human woman and a dragon god who descended from the sky. But perhaps most remarkable of all is the creation story of the Sumerians, who are believed by most mainstream archaeologists to be the earliest human civilization on Earth. Approximately 4,000 years ago, the Sumerians recorded stories about powerful beings called the Anunnaki, who descended to Earth from the sky. One of these figures was known as Enki. And
which is, okay, hold on a second. Hold on a second. The Sumerians were the ones who called their gods the Anunnaki. Then why the hell are the Anunnaki so often associated with ancient Egypt? Oh, crap. Brittle as dry. So, when I created Esoterra, I created a faction called the Anunnaki, who are supposed to represent the Egyptian gods. Because all of the internet pointed to the Anunnaki as building the pyramids, building Egyptian culture, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, you know what? That's a neat, fun way to tie in alien conspiracy theory and mythology, right? But they're saying it was the Sumerians, so now I need to go back and fix it? Or do I just have the offshoot of Anunnaki from the Sumerians? Because I think they had the Anunnaki, and then there was another race that was the Anunnaki enslaved, and they were called something else. So would I have to, unfortunately, call the Sumerian mythology gods the other? The enslaved people? That would be freaking awful, actually.
To author Zechariah Sitchin, who spent years studying the Sumerian cuneiform tablets. Enki is the equivalent of the serpent in the Garden of Eden.
Enki is the god of technology of the Anunnaki. Zechariah Sitchin noticed that Enki was symbolized by a serpent, and he made the simple leap to suggest that he, in fact, is the serpent in the Garden of Eden that was responsible for putting us on our current path of evolution.
Oh, that's technology from the Anunnaki.
Enki altered our human DNA in order to awaken us and to
also
illuminate
10
us.
seconds. Why?
Ancient astronaut theory proposes that this actually is extraterrestrial intervention, that as the Egyptian and Sumerian stories tell us, beings came from other worlds and activated that part of our brain that makes us human.
Oh, that's it? Well, that was abrupt. What we are going to do, however, is talk about
whatever
Palestine.
your business needs, Vistaprint can print.
Wow.
We were being tortured in ways I cannot describe, Faraj says. Only God knows what we have been through. I swear to you, it was the kind of torture nobody can speak of. Overwhelmed, it is almost too painful for him to recount.
Stories regarding the absolute torture of Palestinian prisoners, many of whom have never been charged with a crime, are becoming more and more obvious, apparent in the news. We're seeing them trickle into the mainstream media, even with CNN putting out new investigative reports on the matter. Here's more.
They play with your emotions, he says. They would show us photos of our relatives' bodies, pictures of our families and children, and say, "Look at your children, we killed them." They would show us pictures of our wives, our sisters, and tell us they had taken them and done this and that to them. Inside, the relatives of those released on Monday frantically call loved ones to share the news. They told him they had killed us all. He still can't believe that we're alive.
So think about that.
We are. I like how we had like a brief moment of respite with some little fun Bible talk about the Anunnaki. And now Israel's finally freeing some Palestinian hostages and we find out that they have been psychologically torturing these innocent people, often not even charged, which we already knew, of course, from the reporting that was underway anyway. But can you imagine? I mean, I don't have a wife, I don't have children, but I do have family and I do have friends. I'm sure more or the same would apply to you. I know some of you who watch do have children, do have spouses, do have loved ones. I served in the military, right? I was active duty. I wasn't some weekend warrior. I mean, I was after the fact, but first, I was active duty. I put on the uniform every single day. That meant my life was under threat every single day. If I were stupid enough to get myself captured, even though I never deployed, military members do get captured every single, well, maybe not every single day, but they do get targeted by terrorist organizations in other nation states. We get training on the signs to look for, how to avoid being a target and being targeted, and what to do if we are captured. It's called the Law of Armed Conflict. And that isn't a secret. You can Google that, you can find it. There's also military law, and then there's the Geneva Conventions. The United States is not allowed to conduct torture of prisoners. Under our own law, the UCMJ and the Law of Armed Conflict, as well as the Geneva Conventions, of which Israel is still a part of, by the way. And psychological torture is obviously also banned. But I want to put into perspective, you are captured by an enemy country, not a terrorist organization, although technically what Israel is doing is pretty much acting like a rogue state and a terrorist organization. But for the sake of argument, Israel is a nation state. They are a sovereign state. They are a country with laws and elected leaders. You are a Palestinian captured by that nation state. And you know that that nation state has laws. It has elected officials. It has elected leaders. It has rules that they're supposed to abide by. But when it comes to you, the Palestinian, you know that they have been trying to erase your existence since Nakba, which is going on 70, 80 years now. And when they say, we have murdered your children, we have raped your daughters, your wives, your sisters, your aunts, your mothers, there is nothing to suggest that they would not, did not, or could not do so. Especially since October 7th, you bore witness to the rampant wanton destruction conducted by, enabled by the United States, empowered by the United States, but conducted by Israel against your friends, your family, your neighbors, your family, your brothers, your sisters, your fellow Palestinians, being forced out of your homes, being bulldozed over under rubble, having your hospitals destroyed, your universities destroyed, your holy places destroyed, your lands destroyed. For going on 9 months now? And that very same captor state is telling you, as you have witnessed their atrocities, their cruelty, their wanton disregard for the law, especially international law when it comes to torture and cruelty and inhumane activities. They are telling you day after day, week after week, month after month, they have tortured your children. They have tortured your family, your wives, your daughters, your friends, your neighbors. PTSD does not even begin to describe the suffering you feel. And imagine it further, you haven't even been charged with a crime. You have simply been taken out of your day-to-day life and placed into these horrific conditions. Now imagine you're Mexican. Imagine you're crossing the American border And imagine you're getting captured by ICE. The same exact shit happens. It's been reported, and then, unfortunately, not so much reported, that ICE was conducting similar tactics against detainees of border crossings. The Nazis did the same thing to the Jews. The Russians did the same thing to their detractors. The Chinese were doing it to the Muslims. I can only imagine the unimaginable cruelty that these people had to endure, and they will not have a restful sleep for the rest of their lives. And Israel is somehow being considered the victim in this conflict, despite committing war crimes. Publicly, internationally reported war crimes and crimes against humanity. Just to hit the point home a little further, Zionism is equivalent to the Christian nationalism that we are getting in our country. Christian nationalism has very little to do with Christ or the Bible beyond they tend to reference both in pursuit of their own power. Just like Zionism has nothing to do with Judaism, but they reference the Torah regardless in order to further their own agenda. Make no mistake, what is happening in Israel against Palestinians is in the process of happening here in these United States of America. With that in mind,
you have Palestinian prisoners, many of whom have never been charged with a crime. They're just being detained. And as they're imprisoned, you have, IDF soldiers, whoever's guarding them in the prisons, holding up photos of their family members and talking about all the awful things they did to torture their family members. So the Washington Post reports that on Monday of this week, Abu Salmiya, who is the director of Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, was one of the 50 Palestinian prisoners released into the Gaza Strip. Abu Salmiya was held under Israel's far-reaching unlawful combatants law, a form of administrative detention that allows Gazans to be held for extended periods without charge and without being classified as prisoners of war. The 2002 law permits a Palestinian to be jailed for up to 45 days without a detention order.
Does that not sound familiar? Does this not sound familiar? 2002. What happened around that same time? Let's call it September 11, 2001. Interesting how this law allows Israelis to imprison Palestinians for 45 days, 75 days, 6 months without legal counsel, not even being charged with a crime. Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Up to 75 days without seeing a judge and up to 6 months without legal counsel. How is this okay? How do we, as a country, look at Israel as this shining beacon, this wonderful democracy in the Middle East, when they're doing this to people? When they're simply detaining people without charge and holding them in these prisons where they're tortured, in some cases for up to 6 months without any legal counsel. And by the way, the prisons had been so unbelievably full, these detention centers, that Shin Bet basically forced Israel to release some of those prisoners. And so when it comes to the director of Al-Shifa Hospital, who was recently released, he was about one of 50 Palestinian prisoners released into the Gaza Strip. He was held without charge, and he had been detained for 7 months. 7 months without charge. CNN has more on his release. Let's take a look.
Some 50 Palestinian detainees were released by Israeli authorities on Monday. Why they were originally detained, we may never know. Among them, the director of Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, released more than 7 months after Israeli forces first raided the hospital and detained him. We were beaten and tortured almost every day. My little finger was broken and I was repeatedly struck across the head, causing me to bleed several times, Dr. Abu Salmiya says. The torture taking place in Israel's prisons is near daily.
Thanks for watching. Our audience has helped build TYT into the media law that would reserve administrative detention for non-Jews. That is literally in their headline. The proposed law says that administrative detention or detention without trial, okay, would only be allowed if the person belongs to a terror.
When I tell people she's 21 years old, they're just taken back without a farmer's dog. I truly don't believe she.
Terrorist group. But how do you determine if someone belongs to a terrorist group if you don't adjudicate that through a trial? So can Israeli officials just accuse anyone of being part of a terrorist group and then they immediately get arrested and detained? Yes, that's exactly what they can do. That's exactly.
And that's literally what happened in America. I don't remember the law. I don't know if it got repealed or something. American law that would allow terrorists to be held indefinitely. Oh, the Patriot Act. Ha! On this 4th of July. How could I forget? The act enabled investigators to gather information when looking into the full range of terrorism-related crimes, including different offenses, the use of weapons, and killing Americans abroad, and terrorism financing. And just being accused of it would be enough for you to fall under it and be detained for up to decades. So the U.S. Patriot Act is what this was modeled after. And as Oshun has just pointed out, Biden was one of the authors of the Patriot Act. And he's the one that's going to save democracy. It's pretty bad when the current sitting president has a similar legacy to that of Ronald Reagan, in that you can literally point to one person who was at the epicenter or at least involved in many, if not all, of our current shortcomings as a country, to include the Patriot Act and the fact that other nations are modeling laws after it.
What this new law aims to do. Between October 7th and May 1st, 10 Jewish individuals were actually put in administrative detention, which is outrageous. But compare that to the 2,733 Arabs who have been put in administrative detention since October 7th, between October 7th and May 1st. So again, how are you supposed to determine if someone accused of wrongdoing is actually, in fact, guilty of wrongdoing if you don't have a trial? Israeli authorities have detained more than 9,460 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem since October 7th. And that's according to the Palestinian Prisoners Club. And this is a figure, by the way, that includes those still in prison and those who have been released. And
So 9,000, let's see, total population of Palestine. I guess, oh, okay, I see. West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Wow, these are some terrible statistics as well. Terrible in the sense that, like, these numbers are heartbreaking. 809,000 refugees of the 3.19 million were living in West Bank. 2 million Palestinians were living in the Gaza Strip, of which 1.386 million are registered as refugees and were, by the way, listed as refugees when these numbers were taken by Wikipedia in 2017 and 2018, respectively. So at most, there was 5.36 million, I guess 5.044 million in 2022. 9,000 divided by 5.044 million. Okay, I guess it's not a single-digit percentile. But when you consider there have been well over 30,000 casualties, and the amount that are now considered refugees is 100%, it just gets worse and worse.
Last month, Khalid Mahajna, who is a Palestinian citizen of Israel, was the first lawyer allowed inside one of these prisons. It's the Ste Timan. He told Al Arabi TV that detainees said they also had been sexually assaulted and tortured while detained.
Which, again, is what Nazis did to the Jews and what ICE did, American Immigration and Customs Enforcement, did to detainees as well. I don't really know. I mean, this is what slave owners did to slaves. I mean, again, this is not new. This isn't like, oh my goodness, Israel's doing. America has been doing this pretty much since day one. We are still doing it in modern times. It's just not being reported on because we don't allow the United Nations to come into our country to do these inspections that we force the United Nations to do and impose upon other nations. Through the threat of force, of course.
To 972 magazine, most Palestinians at this detention center, at this prison, don't even know why they're being held. At least 35 detainees have died in unknown circumstances since the war began. Many simply call it the death camp. Detainees are also continually blindfolded and tied up with their hands behind their backs, forced to sleep, hunched over on the floor without any bedding. Their iron handcuffs are removed only during a weekly minute-long shower. And by the way, they don't have watches. And so some of them don't even take that minute-long shower because if they go over a minute, well, they get punished. So they just decide not to take the shower because they don't want to risk going a few seconds over that 1 minute of allotted time to take that weekly 1 minute shower. Now, I can't imagine this level of evil, but
you don't have to imagine. Because we already have evidence of it. We already have historical references to this kind of evil. And it's the Nazis. It's American slave owners. It's the American prison system. It's American ICE. Okay? This is literally par for the course. And our country is guilty of it, which is, again, maybe it would be easier for me to grow as a channel if I just jumped on the right-wing, alt-right train and then became a, I don't know, like a sleeper in their little organization. The thought has definitely crossed my mind, but the amount of cruelty that you would have to spew forth to just even be considered a viable option is far too much for me. It really is. I don't know how Ben Shapiro sleeps at night. I don't know how Andrew Tate sleeps at night. I know he's not American. I don't know how Tucker Carlson sleeps at night. I don't know how a lot of these people sleep at night. Like, how do you have that much hate in your body? Like, I get angry. I absolutely get angry. But if I hold on to that anger for too long, like, I genuinely get nauseous. And there's certainly people that I don't like in this world. But if I think about it for too terribly long, like, I get nauseous. How can you have that much hate to where you hear these stories, you see these reports, right? The cruel and unusual punishment of Palestinians by Israel. As an American, seeing it on your whatever preferred cable network news and be like, yeah, that's what they deserve. What the actual fuck is wrong with you? Also, if you think Israel did nothing wrong, then you would have 100% sided with the Nazis during World War II. And the fact that that number of Americans is exceedingly high and well into the double digits is deeply disturbing.
What's also incredible to me is how much the extremists in the Israeli government brag about what's happening. Because look, there's always that plausible deniability, right? It doesn't matter if it's humanitarian aid groups. It doesn't matter if it's like a third party not having anything to do with Israel or Gaza or Palestinians. There's always denial, right? But it's hard to deny this when a member of Israel's government, Itamar Ben-Gvir, not only takes ownership of the conditions in which these Palestinians are detained and tortured, he wants the conditions to get worse. And he's very open about that. So I'm going to read you his statements. He put this out on X. The time has come to dismantle the spins and answer the flood of briefings and false accusations by the Shin Bet and its spokespersons in the media. Since I assumed the position of Minister of National Security, one of the highest goals I have set for myself is to worsen the conditions of the terrorists in the prisons and to reduce their rights to the minimum required.
So you have attic mold. Thousands of houses in New England do.
I mean,
now you're getting it remediated.
Needless to say,
by law.
But of course, we're going to have to say it. That dehumanization, that rhetoric is currently what is being used today by currently elected Republicans and Democrats about migrants, the unhoused, Palestinians, people who are currently detained. They're criminals, they're animals, they're rapists. They don't deserve rights, they're terrorists. And Project 2025 is well underway, folks. And it's not like the veil hasn't been lifted in America either. Again, sitting officials, elected representatives are arguing on the floor, tweeting, posting, YouTubing, getting on news, and saying this very same rhetoric about whatever flavor of the month is being targeted. Typically, Latin American refugees who are trying to cross our borders. Due to our foreign policy, I might add. And it goes without saying, but this is the exact same stuff that was said about the Jews by the Nazis. I guess one more note here. Some of you might be rolling your eyes like, Jesus Christ, can you stop referring to everything as the Nazis? It's okay. Well, my heritage is both German and American. So I'm fucked either which way, right? Because the Americans, through their acts of cruelty during the slave era, is what the Nazis molded their actions against the Jews. So American cruelty towards slaves is what the Germans decided to emulate when trying to eradicate the Jews. And we have historical references. We have a play-by-play of everything that did. We have dates, we have times, we have receipts of how, when, and why the Nazis did what they did. Their messaging, their rhetoric, their recruitment, their organizing, the whole 9 yards. And if you compare that play-by-play book to Project 2025 and what American politics has become and what Israel is doing, it is the same playbook. And U.S. cruelty towards the Native Americans. Oh, I haven't forgotten. You're right, I don't mention that nearly as much. I do apologize. But, yes, our cruelty towards two specific groups is astronomical. And all of these countries keep modeling their cruelty towards their hated, despised minority group after our nation's cruelty towards their disdained minority group. Why does this not play when I click?
He's calling them terrorists. Most of them haven't even been charged with anything. They haven't stood trial. They haven't received legal counsel. He's just calling them terrorists because, hey, Palestinian and terrorist is synonymous, right? Same thing.
Well, and when you...
By the way, he's not done yet. There's
also,
more.
When
everything published...
When you dehumanize your enemy, right? When you call them terrorists and animals, it's easier for people to be angry with you against some undesirable, such as rabid animals or terrorists. Nobody likes rabid animals. Nobody likes terrorists. Than if we said the innocent men, women, and children that we've been torturing inhumanely under even worse conditions. Right? Obviously, nobody's going to be like, yeah, let's do that. Except, I mean, at this point, there are plenty of Israelis who are saying, yep, kill them all, slaughter them, take from them everything. Notwithstanding, this is part and parcel the kind of messaging that you have to do in order to sway the public opinion towards your cruel and evil rhetoric.
About the abominable conditions of these vile murderers in prison was true. They ruled the prisons without question and did whatever they pleased.
And then, that's the,
I don't know how
the
that
next one. That's the best part. Blame the horrific conditions on the victims so that you have zero accountability for them. Correct. True Steel, you are 100% correct. And that's what's so appalling is that, again, what's happening in Israel is happening in America, and what's happening in both countries has been happening for decades. It's just now with the internet, it's harder to hide. And so what do these despots do? Instead of trying to walk it back and instead of trying to fix the issues, instead of, changing their tune, they double down. Because again, nationalism and alt-right extremism is on the rise globally. In China and Japan, especially in Europe, especially in America, obviously in Israel. And so they feel the rising tide of cruelty and think they can get away with it.
Makes any sense. How are they doing whatever they please when they're not even allowed to take daily showers? I mean, when they're handcuffed 100% of the time, when they're not allowed to lay down to sleep, when some of them are allegedly being sexually assaulted by prison guards as a form of punishment in front of other Palestinian detainees. He complained that the Shin Bet had been trying to prevent him from making the prison conditions more horrific. However,
I'm not going to call Kamala Harris what I want to call her, but she did lie about Palestine being rapists. Meanwhile, Zionists are doing that. No, and that's the thing. Like I said, thank you for bringing up a valid point from the Democratic side, because it's not just the Republicans that are doing this. The Democrats are doing this too. Which, again, this channel, what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, the messaging that we're trying to convey, definitely feels like an uphill struggle. But here's the thing. I'm doing, in 2024, the equivalent to what I would have done in Nazi Germany in 1939. For better or for worse, I am fighting against this corruption. For better or for worse, I am doing the best I can with the messaging and the resources and the skill set at my disposal. And of course, the support of people like you. And if you're not doing this or something else equivalent to this, guess what? You're a good German. You would have enabled and empowered the rise of the Third Reich. So, And in the history, like, here's the problem too. History is written in the future, not in the present. History happens in the present, but it isn't written about and talked about and taught until the future, obviously, hence history. Basically, 2001 to, I'm gonna guess, 2032 is going to be a dark ages of American history. A period in time that will be talked about, if there's still a country, of course, in the year 2050, the year 2070, as a time where alt-right extremism took this country by the throat due to the fear of terrorism by Middle Eastern nations, and that discrimination and phobia kept taking on different turns as the years progressed, and public opinion faded from supporting the war effort. The propaganda movement then shifted the war effort to supporting our troops to sustain the war effort, but without necessarily supporting it, but supporting the people who had no choice other than to serve their country or give up their years and years of service, which then transitioned into this atrocity, the modern day Holocaust, 70 years or so, no, it's got to be more than that now, 80 years after the fact, in which alt-right extremism had made its full emergence into the public eye and solidified its control over public discourse and society during the 2024 election cycle, into the 2028 election cycle, and by the 2032 cycle, it finally got broken up by SaSeshen, who somehow didn't get himself killed in the next 8 years. And then in 2050 or 2070, when I'm already long gone and dead, our children's children will be learning about how we started on this damn channel, became president, and undid the harm that we are seeing and talking about throughout these years.
However, after the outbreak of the war, he says, I was able to finally carry out the long-awaited reform. The conditions of the terrorists in the prison were reduced to a minimum. We stopped the final deposits, canceled the canteens for the terrorists, removed the electrical devices from the cells, stopped the terrorists' promenade, dramatically reduced the terrorists' stay in the showers, canceled the speaker's status, and stopped the indulgent food menu that was converted into a minimum menu. And if you're wondering, oh, what does that minimum menu entail? They get a little bit of lebni. Okay, it's like a kind of like a thick yogurt type substance. It's delicious. I love it, lebni. But they get lebni and maybe a tomato, maybe a cucumber, and that's it for an entire day. He went on to give his barbaric idea for how to deal with overcrowded prisoners or prisons. Remember, Shin Bet had forced Israel to release some of the prisoners who hadn't been charged with anything because these prisons were so overcrowded. And so here's what Ben Gvir has to say about that. I've already proposed a much simpler solution of enacting the death penalty for terrorists, which would solve the overcrowding issue, legislation to which the Shin Bet is also vehemently opposed. Yeah, because you can't just point to people and say they're terrorists without, a trial, without charging them and then having them go through a trial.
I don't think you guys believe me. I don't think Americans believe the people who say that this is the Nazi playbook. The Nazi playbook of exterminating the Jews, which step was unilaterally executing them without a trial. Now I'm on a watch list because I'm on the final solution overview. We'll just post it here because we're on this one anyway. It is not known when the leaders of Nazi Germany definitively decided to implement the final solution. What is clear, however, is that the final solution was the culmination of a decade of increasingly severe discriminatory anti-Jewish measures implemented by the Nazis. Today, the final solution is used as a synonym for the genocide of Europe's Jews. Under the rule of Adolf Hitler, the persecution and segregation of Jews was implemented in stages. After the Nazi Party achieved power in Germany in 1933, its state-sponsored racism led to anti-Jewish legislation, economic boycotts, and the violence of the Kristallnacht pogroms, all of which aimed to systemically isolate Jews from society and drive them out of the country. After the September 1939 German invasion of Poland, anti-Jewish policy escalated to the imprisonment and eventual murder of European Jewry. The Nazis first established ghettos, enclosed areas designed to isolate and control the Jews, in the Generalgouvernement, a territory in central and eastern Poland overseen by a German civilian government, and the Wartgau, an area of western Poland annexed to Germany. Polish and Western European Jews were deported to these ghettos where they lived. This is literally what's happening to the Palestinians. They have been forced into Rafah and they are forced to live in tents. This is exactly what is happening right now. This is literally what is being reported about the prisons that are overcrowded. And they are literally saying, this fucking piece of garbage is literally saying, let's just kill them. After the June 1941 German invasion of the Soviet Union, SS and police units, acting as mobile killing units, began massive killing operations aimed at entire Jewish communities. By autumn 1941, the SS and police introduced mobile gas vans. These paneled trucks had exhaust pipes reconfigured to pump poisonous carbon monoxide gas into sealed spaces, killing those locked within. They were designed to complement ongoing shooting operations. On July 17, 1941, 4 weeks after the invasion of the Soviet Union, Hitler tasked SS chief Heinrich Himmler with responsibility for all security matters in the occupied Soviet Union. Hitler gave broad authority to physically eliminate any perceived threats to permanent German rule. Again, the U.S. Patriot Act. Again, the law that they were talking about earlier. 2 weeks later, on July 31st, 1941, Nazi leader Hermann Göring authorized SS General Reinhard Heydrich to make preparations for the implementation of a complete solution of the Jewish question. In the autumn of 1941, Heinrich Himmler assigned German General Odilo Globochnik, that's not a very German name, with the implementation of a plan to systemically murder the Jews of the Generalgouvernement. The codename Reinhard was eventually given to this plan, named after Heydrich, who happened to be assassinated by Czech partisans. As part of Operation Reinhard, Nazi leaders established 3 killing centers in Poland: Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka, the sole purpose of the mass murder of Jews. The Majdanek camp served from time to time as a killing site for Jews residing in the Generalgouvernement. In its gas chambers, the SS killed tens of thousands of Jews, primarily forced laborers too weak to work. The SS and police killed at least 167,000 Jews, as well as approximately 4,300 Roma, in gas vans at the Chełmno killing center about 30 miles northwest. So, when we talk about Nazi Germany, and when we compare modern-day Israel and modern-day America to Nazi Germany, I don't want to hear a fucking thing about it. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a... I've watched a lot of documentaries about the Nazis. I know you're correct. There. We might not
Ali
be able
Raider
to.
says he was detained for more than 8 months. Look at my legs, he says. They wouldn't give us anything to treat our rashes. Many have spoken of the little food and water they received while in detention. Others say they were denied medication, including insulin for diabetes. For a month and a half, I was blindfolded, handcuffed, and forced to kneel, Wa'il Mansour says, highlighting the deep scars left on his wrists.
The whole world is watching this. Like, I get that the US government will always provide cover for anything Israel has to do or wants to do. But the rest of the world is watching this. And if anyone is under the impression that the current Israeli government is effectively rooting out terrorism and terrorists against them, man, they couldn't be more wrong. This is the kind of behavior and the kind of treatment toward innocent people that breeds extremism and breeds terrorism. People like Ben Gvir do not have Israel's best interests in mind. And he's an evil, evil person. To watch these people who have never been charged with a crime, who have never stood trial, get tortured the way they've been tortured, and think that the torture isn't enough is just absolutely sick. And we don't have a leader here in the United States who is really willing to fight against this and to maybe talk some sense into Israel's government. Or maybe.
I mean, we do have to give a shout out to Jill Stein. I'd love to put my name in that particular hat, but I'm not a national level leader. I might have national recognition, but I'm certainly not at the same level as Jill Stein. And she has unequivocally stated her support for Palestine and what she would do about Israel. That being said, her chances of winning are astronomically slim, and I'm hoping that's the point she's making here.
Even, use the leverage the United States has in regard to the weaponry that we send them in order to rein in some of Israel's behavior. But, no one's even paying attention to what's happening in Israel and Gaza right now. Too much going on with our own unstable, chaotic political system.
And I wouldn't even go that far. Do you have any idea how many people are just burying their heads in the sand? How many people have you talked to? Which, again, I get it. I'm not Hasanabi with 30,000 viewers, but I guarantee if he asked the same question to his 30,000 viewers and asked them this, how many people that you personally know are just ignoring politics, ignoring what's happening in Israel and Palestine, ignoring the elections, ignoring all this suffering and pain and anguish, and just disassociating from it altogether, trying to just keep your head down, go to your job, pay your bills, play some video games, watch a couple movies, have sex with your loved one, well, your partner, unless you're in Alabama, I guess. I guarantee you the amount of people that are actually paying attention is dwindling. The amount of people who are getting angry because they're paying attention might be increasing, but I don't think those numbers are coalescing well enough. People roll their eyes when I go on my rants about politics at work. Well, that's better than my experience, which is people will deliberately and purposefully take the counter point. For instance, if I brought up, wow, police brutality is becoming a problem, they're like, yeah, because those N-words are a bunch of problems and they should be. And it's like, wow, you just said the N-word as a white person at work without a second thought or hesitation. Outstanding. I'm glad your hatred and audacity is that strong. And that's literally the country we're in. That's the society we're in right now. And I get it. Like, intellectually, I understand, right? It is a lot to take that in and just scream into the void because technically there's very little you can do other than bitch at your reps and be like, we need to put a stop to this. But you know that you're alone. You're not, obviously, but you know that you're alone because your small circle of peers, co-workers, friends, and family, right? I bet only 1 in 50 people. So 1 in 50, what's our population? 330 million? Divided by 50. That actually probably tracks. 6.6 million? Nah, there's got to be a few more political junkies than that. So maybe not 1 in 50 people. Maybe 1 in 30, but it feels like it's 1 in 50. Either which way, it's a larger number, right? So what is 330 million times? Let's be generous. Let's do 20%. I bet 20% of the country's probably political junkies, right? Or is that too optimistic? 66, yeah, no, that's way too many people. 66 million people? Nah, that's entirely too many. Of course, 33 million seems too high too. 3% would be around 10 million. 10 million might be a right number, but that's, yeah, Jesus, 3%. Holy crap. 9.9 million. 9.9 million people. Well, actually, then what? Okay, that's 3%. So what is that? 1 in 33? 1 in 33 people, I guess. No, that's not how that works. Well, that has to be how that works. Divided by 9. Whoops. Yeah, 1 in 33. Okay, never mind. I did the math, and then I questioned the math that I just did. 1 in 33 people are probably giving a shit about current events. 1 in 33. Most of us only have a mother, a father, maybe a couple siblings, call it grandparents and grandparents, and then maybe a couple aunts, couple uncles, couple few cousins, co-workers. All right, let's go like that. And then close friends. That's 30. And then 3 other people. Whatever, I don't know. I would say most people have a small knit group of 33. That's pretty reasonable. Probably up to 40 or 50. So in a group of 50, there's 2 of you. Out of that group of 50, that is likely giving a damn about politics. And in your own individual circle, there's only 1 of you. 1. You. You out of that group that you know of is more than likely the only one interested in politics, paying attention, and stressing out about it. And that's still nearly 10 million people. 10 million people. Here's the thing that really should give you hope. And the reason why we're doing this, and the reason why you are not alone. 10 million people. Well, you know what? Let's just be correct with the numbers. 9.9 million. I don't know if I can copy and paste that number. Times $27 times 12 months is $3.207 billion. You don't believe me? More than happy to add a source. Desktop capture calculator. Let's do this again. Just for funsies. I thought I could just elongate it, but that's fine. So again, you see these numbers here, right? The 9.9 million times $27, which is the average donation that a small donor individual could possibly afford, right? I am currently unemployed, but I can still toss in $27. Okay? $27 is a tank of gas, which I know that's a lot of money for many people. Not arguing that fact, just certainly not. But 9.9 million people donating $27 monthly to a single cause generates $267,300,000. If we did that monthly, we would generate $3 billion. That is a boatload of Legos. An astronomical sum of Legos that they would have to step on, these powers that be. $3 billion is what the people who are paying attention and are outraged is what we are worth. We could create an annual organization that generates $3.2 billion in revenue to facilitate an infrastructure that can get us elected, volunteers, coordinators, paid positions that know how to run campaigns and do the door knocking and do community engagement and this, that, and the other. $3.2 billion per year is what we're sitting on by infighting, by not working together, by not organizing, by literally just trying to step over each other, by giving up, by being afraid, by thinking we're alone, by thinking we are powerless, by thinking that we do not have enough to make a difference, that it's already too late. We could raise $267 million this month. We could raise that by the end of July. Just for context, we got these numbers, right? Oh, it's this right here. Is this how? Okay, so 267.3 million. The average salary to survive in this country right now is $80,000. So every hired position that we would want to create should be at least $80,000. Divided by 80,000. That is 3,341 jobs. Incidentally, there are about 3,700 counties in the country. So, if we split that by state, we could have offices in every single state that is approximately 66 people strong. Now, obviously, that's not enough to go into every single district. It's not enough to go into every single district. It isn't. It is enough to run several congressional campaigns. It is certainly enough to get congressional campaigns. I would say if you have a staff of 5 being campaign managers, 5 being finance officers, and 10 dealing with social media, but creating slates for every candidate that would fall under, the remaining 26, the remaining 46 could be fundraising, they could be recruitment, they could be training, they could be design, they could be social media, they could be all this, that, and the other. And you could, if you generate enough volunteers, you could quadruple that number, right? So in volunteers, so it would actually be a grand total of times 5. You could have an organization in every single state of 334 people. Again, that does not seem like a lot. It really doesn't seem like a lot. But remember, only 20 of those people, well, I guess the original 66 of those 334 are creating content, creating material, doing the recruitment, doing the fundraising, doing this, that, and the other to facilitate the activities of the other, what is that? Like 270 people-ish? Which are the volunteers who then disseminate that information, whether that's on social media, whether that's door knocking, whether that's going to communities and cleaning up parks. 270 people, again, does not sound like a lot. It really doesn't. But the context is that's 270 more volunteers than most organizations have. 66 paid, well-paid, full-time workers that are creating material for all candidates in a specific area of responsibility is a ridiculous amount of qualified staff. And every single state would have this. With just 1 month of $27 donations with the 3% that think this isn't possible. Maybe this is the video I need to make. I don't know. Maybe I try and figure out a way to make a viral video using a calculator and talking about this and do my best. Again, if I could afford to pay somebody $80,000 to do my video content for me, trust and believe I would. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But it goes to the point that if we had that skill, if we had those tools and resources and those personnel in place, and an infrastructure able to accept and expand upon them, the impact would be, well, it would be multiplicative. So, just a bit of context for the sake of argument. And that was over. So we got Palestine. And it's coming up to 6 o'clock, and that's usually when we wind down a little bit and play some video games. We definitely need to wind down. I can't stay that hot and heavy. That was a lot. That was a lot. Let's hear from the UN, though. I mean, may as well. Well, we're winding down, right? But you gotta. It's just like after a run, you gotta do a cool down walk.
Words of condemnation to use for such incidents. We saw the footage.
So that's kind of. She immediately brought up a valid point. The goal of evil is not to succeed in being evil. It is to wear down those who would combat their evil from even wanting to try. And that is actually a form of gaslighting. And there's been this meme going around, or a Reddit post or something. It's like, my abusive husband never told me what to wear, but through consistent arguments, I just chose not to wear them. It was better for my mental health. So what these cruel individuals in Israel and America and all these other alt-right institutions are doing is just doing the Gish Gallop of cruelty and inhumane and this, that, and the other, and then taking it further and taking it further without penalty or accountability, mind you. And because of that lack of penalty or accountability, they are able to continue on with their atrocities, and it just wears people down until they just give up. And that's why we just spent a few minutes going over how much power we actually have if we were to utilize it.
Of this terribly inhumane treatment of individuals. And as the High Commissioner said, this is really about the denigration and the dehumanization of an entire community. Which almost enables and facilitates the conduct by Israeli troops. We've been receiving very worrying, very distressing reports of how Palestinian detainees are being treated by Israeli forces since October 7th. But let's not forget that, in fact, the treatment of Palestinian detainees by Israelis has been a long-standing issue. In the West Bank, I believe there are more than 9,000 Palestinians who've been detained, many of them under administrative detention. In the case of the most recent detentions in relation to the conflict in Gaza, we've received reports of people being held incommunicado. Their families have no idea where they are until they are released, if they are released. We've received reports of torture, mistreatment, handcuffing, deprivation of food, of water, of medication. And these are very worrying reports. We have raised them directly with the Israeli authorities. We've asked for a transparent investigation into these allegations, and it's crucial that that takes place as soon as possible. The lack of due process rights for detainees, holding them incommunicado, the mistreatment of the detainees, and then the release without any recourse to any kind of redress mechanisms for them is unacceptable, and it needs to stop.
Do you know the U.S. solar company?
Enough said on that. let's wind down by talking about Nixon. How screwed up is that when talking about Nixon is a wind down from evil and corruption and cruelty and all this other just mismanagement, and that Nixon is watered down?
Street crime and so on, you went to Congress and got laws passed and so on. Wouldn't it have been better here? Wouldn't it have been better here, though, to have done what you were going to do legally rather than doing something that was illegal? I mean, seizing evidence in this way and all of that. In retrospect, wouldn't it have been better to combat that crime legally rather than adding another crime to the list?
But basically, the proposition you've just stated in theory is perfect. In practice, it just won't work. To get legislation, specific legislation, to have warrantless entries for the purpose of obtaining information and the rest, would not only have raised an outcry, but it would have made it terribly difficult to move in on these organizations, because basically they would be put on notice by the very fact that the legislation was on the books that they'd be potential targets. And action's either going to be covert or not.
So what, in a sense, you're saying is that there are certain situations, and the Houston plan, or that part of it was one of them, where the president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something, and do something illegal.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
By definition.
Exactly. Exactly. If the president, if, for example, the president approves something, approves an action because of the national security, or in this case, because of a threat to internal peace and order of a significant magnitude, then the president's decision in that instance is one that enables those who carry it out to carry it out without violating a law. Otherwise, they're in an impossible position.
Nixon is the watered down version to wind back, to lower our temperature from the inhumanity that is Israel. And Richard Nixon himself, folks. Richard Nixon himself, Dick the man, said it would be impossible to do the job if you couldn't do a little bit of crime as president.
But so that, just so we understand this, equally it would apply, presumably...
Is he going to be exonerated? Like, are we going to just go back in time and exonerate him from Watergate and undo his impeachment or whatever?
Prosecution at the end.
Jesus.
Equally, it would, in the theoretical case, where the action ordered by the president was a murder, it would also apply, presumably.
No, I think that's the reason that when I answered the question earlier, I tried to put it in more.
Well, why would the burglars? Why would the burglars not be liable to?
Well, let us suppose this. If, for example, President Roosevelt had decided that the assassination of Hitler before World War II would save 5 or 6 million Jews from extermination, I'm not sure that wouldn't be an awful tough call. Now, my point is
No, but in this-
that as far as assassination
We're talking
is
about
concerned-
dissent in this country.
Yeah,
though.
as far as
dissent in this country.
dissent in this country.
Yes, I mean in terms of these burglaries, you were saying that if these
No.
if these burglars went in, they wouldn't be liable to criminal prosecution. Well, what about if a murder was ordered in this country? Would the presidential shield also protect the murderer?
No,
as it protects
because
the
I don't
burglar?
know anybody who has been president or is now who would ever have ordered such an action. And I haven't. And
Nor do
here's-
I am not a crook. I wouldn't have issued the murder, and not the guy who's currently president would have issued the murder. Surely no president would just issue the murder. But this is the question. But there is an answer. And it actually has to do with Delta Force. And let's see. What was the provision, or no, it's not was. What is the provision that allows the, I think it's just the president, but it could be more, president to use the Delta Force to act outside of the bounds of the Constitution? That is a real thing, folks. Section 1385 in 1878, Congress has also enacted a number of statutes that authorize the use of land and naval forces to execute their objective. The Posse Comitatus Act outlaws the willful use of any part of the army. Oh, okay, hold on. Hold on a second. This is trying to talk about declaring war, and that's not what we're talking about here. There was, and is, I guess now it's going to be harder to find, go figure. Public law. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Delta Force extrajudicial authority. We're finding this now because we are 100% going to be talking about this. I mean, of course, it could be that it has been changed since then, which is what some of these seem to link. So, the 2024 AFPI amicus brief, no military officer has the legal authority to issue or carry out an order requiring murder or assassination. So this, as of 2024, had to be stated specifically in 2024 to prevent that. So hold on a second. We're going to read it. I just need to find the part where it actually talks about it. Because we got defense, like this is a whole 271 page document. Yikes. Never mind. I guess we're not going to read that. And here's something about Donald Trump. What? Oh my goodness. Introduction and interest of amici curiae. Could a president order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? That question, oh my God. This is, what a day, folks. What a day. Is this, I think it's this. Yep, it is definitely this. We're gonna have to make it a little bigger. That question was posed by a member of the panel at oral argument in the court below. Amici curiae, who have served as military combat generals and senior office officials at the Pentagon and have held other senior executive branch positions, submit that the answer to the panel members' question is a resounding no. A president enjoys broad authority, but one such military with very few limitations is that the president's order may not contravene the Constitution or the laws. Accordingly, the president has no authority to order the military to assassinate a political rival. Furthermore, the military is required not to carry out such an unlawful, non-military order if given. Indeed, any military officer who carried out or issued such an order would be committing the gravest crimes, murder. Whether or not a president has the immunity claimed by petitioner in this case, do not address in this brief. A president cannot order the military to assassinate a political rival and have that order carried out. Except, we're seeing that that's not the case. And this ties back into Palestine. Why are we putting a port in Palestine and Gaza for aid when we could simply stop providing guns and money to Israel and force the issue at the border where there are trucks waiting to cross into Gaza to give the aid. There are military commanders who are aiding and abetting and following those orders, despite literally being told that there is a requirement not to carry out such an unlawful order. I guess this is just, yeah. And this is that Air Force AFI, to go further into it. Needless to say, there was Delta Force. I know there was. Seems like that is getting scrubbed. Which is fine. That's fine. Let's try an incognito window, though. Maybe I'm just, logged in and all that fun stuff. Delta Force has the authority to act outside the confines of the Constitution. And I think maybe it is the Posse Comitatus. So let's add another source. Wikipedia. Signed on 1878, which limits the powers of the federal government and the use of federal military. Okay, that's fine. The act originally applied only to the Army, but then and to the Air Force as well. The authority under which a county sheriff or another law officer can conscript any able-bodied person to assist in keeping the peace. So that's the history. Used an exception to the act derived from the Enforcement Acts to send federal troops into Little Rock, Arkansas during the 57 school segregation crisis. The Arkansas governor had opposed desegregation. The Enforcement Acts, among other powers, allowed the president to call up military forces when state authorities were either unable or unwilling to suppress violence that was in opposition to the citizens' constitutional rights, which is even crazier when you think about it because, oh my God. States violating... Oh, I was actually going to talk about George Floyd, and there it is. Generated controversy when National Guard troops were called in to suppress protests without Donald Trump invoking the Insurrection Act. One set of troops has historically operated as the equivalent of a state militia, not subject to the act restrictions, even though it is a federal entity under the command of the president. National Guard troops were also called in at the request of federal agencies, some of whom were deputized as police, which says National Guard troops may engage into support of operations or missions undertaken by the members' unit at the request of the president or SecDef. Saying the intent of Title 502 was to cover training exercises only, and U.S. Representative McGovern discovered this as a loophole to circumvent Posse and introduced legislation to close it. In 2020, U.S. Representative Schiff introduced an amendment to the act to expand its coverage to include the Navy, Marine, Space Force. This amendment was eventually included in the 2022 National Defense Authorization Act. So do you see how we have actually had the power? That this country and our leaders have had the power to act outside of the confines of the Constitution? This isn't the one that I'm specifically looking for, but close enough to kind of point you in the direction that this was a thing. And has only very, very recently been addressed, was suspended in 2006. There are several situations in which the act does not apply. These include National Guard units, federal troops used in accordance to the Insurrection Act, which has been invoked 23 times as of 1992. The Attorney General may request the Secretary of Defense provide emergency assistance if domestic law enforcement is inadequate to address specific types of threats involving the release of nuclear materials. The only exemption is the deployment of nuclear material. Okay, cool. Provide surveillance. Exclusions to the Coast Guard, advisory and support roles. you get where I'm going. It's not the one that I was looking for. I'll have to make it a point to look that up because I don't want you to think I'm just lying about this. But the federal government has had the ability to use the military for its own gain without repercussions. And there have been amendments to existing laws to try and shore up those loopholes, as we have seen.
Nor do I have evidence of that either.
The Houston plan, as you know, is very carefully worded in terms of how limited it is to be.
Yeah, no, but all I was saying was, where do we draw the line? If you're saying that presidential fiat can, in fact, mean that someone who does one of these black bag jobs, these burglaries, is not liable to criminal prosecution, why shouldn't the same presidential power apply to somebody who the president feels in the national interest should murder a dissenter? Now, I'm not saying it's happened. I'm saying, what's the dividing line between the burglar not being liable to criminal prosecution and the murderer? Or is there one?
Because, as you know, from many years of studying and covering the world of politics and political science, there are degrees, there are nuances, which are difficult to explain, but which are there. As far as this particular matter is concerned, each case has to be considered on its merits.
So that, in other words, really, the only dividing line, really, you were saying in that answer, really between the burglary and the murder. Again, this is not a subtle way to say that there was a murder of a dissenter in this country, because I don't have any evidence to that effect at all. But the point is, just the dividing line is that, in fact, the dividing line is the president's judgment.
Yes, and the dividing line, and just so that one does not get the impression that a president can run amok in this country and get away with it, we have to have in mind that a president has to come up before the electorate. We also have to have in mind that a president has to get appropriations from the Congress. We have to have in mind, for example, that as far as the CIA's covert operations are concerned, as far as the FBI's covert operations are concerned, through the years, they have been disclosed on a very, very limited basis to trusted members of Congress. I don't know whether it can be done today or not.
Right. But on the other hand, I don't think
that's a restraint.
Yes. I don't think, reading the documentation, that it was ever intended, was it, that the Houston plan and the black bag robbery should be revealed to the electorate or really discussed with Congress?
No, these were not. That's correct. That's correct.
The Houston plan? Let's check that out. The Houston plan. The Houston plan, and we'll slap that on this here little, well, no, we'll slap it on as a window, because we're going to use this as YouTube, and I don't want to keep having to recreate YouTube here. All right, kids, gather round. Gather round, children. Let's have Papa SaSeshen's story time. The Houston plan was a 43-page report and outline of proposed security operations put together by the White House. It came to light during the Watergate hearings headed by Senator Ervin. According to U.S. Senator Matthias, U.S. President Nixon rescinded the plan on July 28, 1970, after approving it on July 23rd. Matthias commented that many constitutional lawyers believed that for 5 days in 1970, the fundamental guarantees of the Bill of Rights were suspended by the mandate given the secret Houston plan, and that during the 5 days the plan was approved, authoritarian rule had superseded the Constitution. Specifically, the authorization was to suspend the protections from the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution against unreasonable searches and seizures. The impetus for this report was President Nixon's desire for coordination of domestic intelligence on purported left-wing radicals, the counterculture era anti-war movement in general. Houston had been assigned as White House liaison to the Interagency Committee on Intelligence, a group chaired by Hoover, then Federal Bureau of Investigation Director. Houston worked closely with William C. Sullivan, Hoover's assistant, in drawing up the options listed in what eventually became the document known as the Houston Plan. The plan called for domestic burglary, illegal electronic surveillance, and opening the mail of domestic radicals. At one time, it also called for camps in western states where anti-war protesters would be detained. He also implemented the Southern Strategy, which has been paying dividends. On July 23rd, ratified the proposals and then were submitted as documents to the directors of the FBI, CIA, DIA, and NSA. Only Hoover objected to the plan and gained the support of then Attorney General John Mitchell to pressure Nixon to rescind the plan. Despite the ultimate decision to revoke the Houston Plan, several of its provisions were implemented. After the Houston Plan, the FBI lowered the age of campus informants, thereby expanding surveillance of American college students as sought through the plan. In 1971, the FBI reinstated its use of mail covers and continued to submit names to the CIA mail program. As details of the plan unfolded during the Watergate hearings, it came to be seen as part of what Attorney General Mitchell referred to as White House horrors. This included the Plumbers Unit, the proposed firebombing of the Brookings Institution, the 1971 burglary of the office of the psychiatrist of Daniel Ellsberg, the creation of a White House enemies list, the use of the IRS to punish those deemed to be enemies. The Houston Plan was also investigated by the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, chaired by Senator Frank Church in 1976, into activities of the CIA and abuses of domestic intelligence gathering. Best viewers on, well, I don't know what you tried writing there. I'm guessing you're a troll, but I guess until you actually troll, then we're not going to worry about that. But that's pretty dismal. And now we have Project 2025, which we're not going to get into today. I think we've gone hot and heavy enough for today. We had Palestine. We cooled off with our Palestinian run and the torture that those people suffered, and we got to Nixon, and now we're able to kind of breathe a little bit. What was on here? Oh, because we had already finished that. I don't know if we should go straight into comedy, though. We should, however, talk about SCOTUS. Among many things that we haven't talked, or that SCOTUS did do, one of the ones we actually didn't talk about was this. Sackler family immunity shield nixed by Supreme Court, thwarting a $6 billion opioid settlement. The High Court's ruling throws a multi-billion dollar opioid settlement into a tailspin over a provision blocking future lawsuits. The Supreme Court on Thursday set fire to the Sackler family $6 billion opioid settlement, allowing the government to object to the deal over an immunity provision. In a split ruling, the court ruled that the Sacklers could not use the bankruptcy code to shield themselves from future lawsuits from opioid victims. Well, that actually seems like a good idea. Rather than seek to resolve claims that substantively belong to Purdue, it seeks to extinguish claims against the Sacklers that belong to their victims. And precisely nothing in 1123B suggests those claims can be bargained away without the consent of those affected, as if the claims were somehow Purdue's own property. They joined in the opinion. The remaining justices said their colleague's decision was devastating for the more than 100,000 opioid victims and their families. Or maybe I'm not understanding it correctly. Let's see. The court's decision rewrites the text of the U.S. Bankruptcy Code and restricts the long-established authority of bankruptcy courts. Oh, okay, so this was through the bankruptcy courts to fashion fair and equitable relief for mass tort victims. As a result, opioid victims are now deprived of the substantial monetary recovery that they long fought for and finally secured after years of litigation. Members of the wealthy family helmed OxyContin maker Purdue Pharma as it entered infamy for aggressively marketing opioid painkillers, fueling an epidemic credited with the deaths of over 700,000 Americans, 300,000 from prescription opioid overdoses alone. Purdue and the Sacklers faced thousands of lawsuits on claims they pushed the painkiller on patients. Native American tribes in several states sought over $40 trillion from the company and family. Wow. The company filed for bankruptcy, agreeing to a settlement that turned Purdue into a public benefits company focused on opioid abatement. Purdue's remaining assets will go towards compensating victims and the communities hit hardest by the addiction. But the Sackler family did not file for bankruptcy, instead agreeing to $6 billion that gave them immunity from future lawsuits. Although the family handed over a hefty sum to tackle the abatement, the government claimed victims are owed much more. In a briefing before the court, the government accused the Sacklers of a milking scheme that removed $11 billion from the profits to private trusts and holding companies. The Sacklers argued 40% of these funds went toward mandatory taxes. The government said the scheme devalued the company ahead of bankruptcy proceedings by including an immunity provision within the bankruptcy settlement. The government said the Sacklers further shielded these funds from accountability. Under the settlement, individual victims would get between $35,000 and $48,000, but anyone who did not sign onto the deal or any future victims would be prevented from suing the Sacklers. By upholding non-consensual releases from future lawsuits, the government claimed the lower court deprived those individuals of their rights. Purdue argued that the settlement was the best option to help the most people. And then this goes 5 and 4. The court said the Bankruptcy Code does authorize non-consensual release for non-debtors, finding that the lower court erred by reading the law too broadly. The catch-all cannot be fairly read to endow a bankruptcy court with the radically different power to discharge the debts of a non-debtor without the consent of affected non-debtor claimants. Relying on the text of the statute, Gorsuch said lawmakers only explicitly authorized non-consensual releases for debtors. Gorsuch recognized that lawmakers gave bankruptcy courts many powers, but said that authority was not unlimited. Oh my God. So yeah, it is as bad as it sounded at first. That's what really irritates me about legalese. Sometimes the bad thing sounds like a good thing, but it ends up not being the good thing. So yeah. $6 billion in payments are now up in the air. The relitigation could take another many years, and the Sacklers could literally drain the trusts and funds and say, oh, we don't have the money to give out anymore. It sucks to suck, nerds. And I think now we need some comedy. I think now we need some levity. And what better than this gentleman, Josh Johnson, who quite often gives political and social commentary discourse in his stand-up specials. Now, I don't know if we're going to get DCMA'd, though. We actually, I'm worried because I'm worried, to be perfectly honest. I don't want to get DCMA'd. Because what we are going to be reacting, and again, I see streamers react to other streamers' content all the damn time, so now I'm concerned. I'm a little worried. Should we be playing with this fire as a small YouTube channel? I guess we'll give it a whirl. We'll give it a whirl, and I'll be sure to comment. I'll be sure to be talking throughout all of this.
There was one day I went to visit my grandma, and there was like a big old like living room type area where people be watching TV or just chatting or reading a book or whatever. And there was, do y'all remember the commercials for like a Rascal? If you don't know what a Rascal was, it was some direct-to-consumer marketing that was going on TV where you were old and you were in your little chair, but they made it feel like a motorcycle. They made you feel like you could really hit that throttle on them, right? And then you could go off-road like with the Rascal, too. Like you could just be going over tree trunks and stuff like that without tipping and stuff. And so there was a guy who looked like he had a new Rascal.
I wasn't going to go there, but...
it wasn't going fast for
you did,
us.
So like, that's on
if you could walk, it wasn't going fast. But if you were in a wheelchair and you hit that throttle, you zooming, right? And so you could tell he couldn't really handle it because his head was back while he was. So my man's head was like all the way back. Like he really couldn't look up, and which is crazy because I swear he was going this fast. Like, but my man is like, oh! All
right. We're going to try our best to win, not get distracted, and not get housed.
And I'm sure in his mind, because everything slows down a little bit as you get older, and now you go in walking speed again, and you haven't been walking for a while. So now all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is what I did when I was back in my 80s, right? So,
oh my God.
Because I don't know how old he was, but he was dusty, right? He was
dusty.
You know what I'm talking about. Don't
Maybe.
do that. I'm not
I'll
being
give you
mean.
that. I've been having to do stretches just because of my back.
At a certain age,
apparently, you have to roll back your shoulders and have your biceps face outwards.
Once you get up in the
or else you
9
have
in the
bad
front
posture.
of the number for your age, there's just a level of like. There's a level of ashy that is time. Y'all want to act like y'all know what I'm talking about, but y'all know that sometimes people get flaky. Okay. I'm gonna move on. Anyway, so my man is zooming, right? He like, and then on the other side of this corner leading to the living room is this other guy who's like in a proper
how do you walk past the
wheelchair? But it has like some little modifications. So I guess it's not a traditional wheelchair. Like he's not fully pushing himself, but it looks like it has like some little levers on it.
I don't know what their benefits
what it was,
are.
but it felt like a knockoff Rascal.
That was not
like
the
it felt, you know what I mean? Like it felt like somebody sold him some damaged goods, where they were like, "No, it's a Rascal." It's like, I don't see the throttle anywhere. Just keep looking.
So there's
it's a Rascal.
the Rhino.
And so he's going like really, really slow. And as they're getting closer,
our chef.
You know those math problems.
We're gonna do some sheep scouting. We're gonna do our best to do some sheep scouting. Partially, though, going the other direction isn't gonna help us because we're going that direction.
You know what I'm talking about, right? If a train leaves Detroit at 5, going 60 miles per hour, and then a train leaves Louisiana going 80 miles per hour.
Right, so we found
at 7
our
o'clock.
other,
when will they crash?
Rhino.
Because then even in school they'd be like, when will it crash? I'd be like, this is a dark. Why can't it just be a delivery or something? You wrote the textbook and you putting crash. Now I gotta figure out when everybody's gonna die. I'm not even allowed to warn them in this scenario. But anyway, basically, this dude has like, he's kind of turning the wheel, but it looks like it's assisted somehow. And the other guy's zooming.
Now,
and then I'm standing at the corner, and I'm like, who do I try to warn?
these 4 corners because that's the only place.
Because in my head for a second, I was like, they're gonna miss each other because this guy's going way too fast. And then I realized that he going fast for him. He going walking speed for us, and then this other guy is going nowhere. Very, very slow, right?
So now,
and then I'm not proud of this, but it took me so long to make a decision because I was bad at math. It took me so long
a house because I think we're getting close to getting housed again.
That they did collide when they both got past the corner.
Whatever I'm doing is going to get me housed.
Hit the slow one.
Right, we shot him.
He tipped.
And now we are running.
And he didn't tip. This is the worst part, actually. So he didn't tip. Like his chair didn't tip, right? He just
there we go. That was the most perfect.
And then he fell the rest of the way
out.
Don't
die! Don't you dare die!
But while he was falling, he was hanging on. Like while he was falling, he was like,
fine. We're good. We're good.
So he's screaming,
we have officially
no, like
not been housed.
And to be honest, I had time to get to him, but I was just so.
Whatchamacallit? A villager to the thing.
I was so shocked that this was happening. And so then he kept falling to the point where one foot was on the ground now. I was like, ooh, you should stand. You could stand up. There's still time to stand up. But then he had tipped like booty over knee, and then
and then
he was hanging, and then the chair was tipped to the point where I was like, the chair gonna fall on you.
I run around,
and then he just sort of let
hills
himself spill, but his butt was already on the ground, but he was still screaming like he was in the air.
Yeah, I
and then he finally let go of the little handle that was at the front, and then he laid back. And I was like, I probably could have done something.
To be fair,
I was watching or not, that moment had nothing to do with me. I was just a witness.
Can we?
And that's how I felt about the debate last night.
Oh, go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. All right, we're going to have to... we're going to have to protect our homie. We're going to have to put our homie away. Okay. We did not find him
Because whether you watched it or you didn't watch it, okay, I watched the whole thing. I watched it.
They're here because that zebra
and
the hunt only spawns near the player. So that doesn't seem right. Oh wait, because
everything
of berries.
happened that we.
So we just need to go here.
Figured might
and then
happen.
we just need to.
This is the thing that I guess I can't get over.
Take over all that.
It happened so quickly. We were worried that like maybe an hour in, Biden might have like a senior moment or something. But he said, "No, I'm gonna start. I'm gonna start slow, and I'm gonna ratchet up."
All right. So now we have confirmed that they're over there.
Because early.
Now we could
maybe
be a jerk.
Second question, maybe
I don't know
first
why you're
question.
going to
I can't
stone,
remember.
but you're not going to tower rush me,
he said
Brad.
Something.
I guess you are going to tower rush me. Well,
and he was kind of trying to get
sucks.
through it, and when he was trying to get through it, he finally started looking down while he was trying to get through it, and then he stopped talking.
Shoot.
I don't know if there's been a deeper silence in my life than when that man stopped talking. It was still his turn. He had stopped saying anything. And while he was not talking, I was talking. Like while he had been like, right? Like once he got here, when he was looking down, I was like,
Q.
Fall.
Q. Why the hell is my
Q? Just fall. You'll clear this whole thing out if you fall right now.
All right, and what are they?
This man has had the nerve to fall every day.
Infantry, right?
Except that day there. I'm yelling at the screen, fall! If that man had fallen, we'd be having a different conversation right now, right? If he had fallen, they would have scooped him up on a stretcher and been like, look, the president had a great answer ready.
What do I get? Start with 100 stone, fortifications, town centers, build faster.
Gravity is a Republican, so...
Here, we're going to go ahead and protect our wood line.
The odds were stacked against him. He's brave for even showing up against that red Republican elephant-ass gravity. Oh.
Or no, get that.
It was insane. I felt like I was going crazy because this is the thing that's infuriating, right? And I'll probably come back to it in a second. But the thing that I cannot get out of my head is that we all knew, and everything that happened is what we said would happen. And now pundits are talking to us on TV, on like legacy media, talking about what happened the way that we talk about what was going to happen before it happened, and they want to convince us that they're worth watching.
That's
you ever
different.
tell somebody a story?
That's different.
And then time
If
passes.
I can build sergeants,
and then
this is a ball game, folks.
They try to tell you your story.
This is a ball game.
Like you didn't tell them the story.
Well, hold on.
You look at them
hold on, let me find out where these...
Either you crazy, or you think I'm crazy, because I told you that.
Hold on.
You're not bringing me any new information. That's what it feels like. It's like after the debate. I watched the after debate, and they were like, he is.
Hold on. If I can build sergeants,
these are the same people, by the way.
We're gonna have a field day right now.
Chase him around the White House. We can barely keep up with them. And I knew they were lying then.
Oh,
because that's the thing. It's like he did
unit,
so poorly. It fully distracts from the fact that Trump didn't do well either.
That's not great for you.
But you know how? Okay.
I can tell you that right now. Because I was a victim of these fuckers.
One time,
and I
was
am not
with some friends
going to be a victim again. What
I was
are
with some
you?
friends, and we were headed to a party. We get there.
Oh crap! I don't have any food.
There's
okay,
like
that's fine.
2 more friends that we're waiting on, and one of them is supposed to bring all the drinks. Right?
That's not great.
And one of the friends had already poured out a beer, was drinking his beer, and when we were stepping outside, because it was
Go
like
ahead and
an
make spearmen, though, just in case.
outdoor in front of the house sort of event. We're all on the lawn
this
and
isn't
everything.
great.
We see
This is not great.
one of
I
our friends who was supposed to bring the
TC
drinks,
Idol.
right, crash right into a light pole, right?
I lost.
And
oh
right
my
when he
gosh.
crashed into the light pole, we all screamed, and a couple people ran over there. And then my friend who had poured the beer was like,
yeah,
"Oh
that's
my God,
certainly not great.
I dropped my drink," right?
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, it's not. Why?
On its own, not good.
I thought we just said that the
In
fortifications
reference to
were
something
stronger.
much bigger happening,
This doesn't seem very strong.
nobody ended up caring, right? And that's how it felt.
Okay. So the good news here.
Like, it's insane. Like we are not
Build
crazy.
that.
We're not crazy. They're crazy. You know what I mean? We're not crazy. They're crazy. We said it already. They're crazy.
fine.
They just don't listen.
I mean, it's not. Again, this is definitely
They don't
not
listen.
fine.
How do you not listen when it's
But we're gonna
everybody saying
build.
it? You know?
I think we just build it
Like-
right there.
There were times.
Build another
there was
thing
one
there.
time in particular where Biden was
All
struggling
right, now we're getting.
to say something.
Get it, buddy.
And even
Why
Trump,
is this so difficult
even
to get them to do what I want them to do?
Jail Trump. Looked at Biden, and you could see it on his face. He was like,
See, if you had just stayed under the tower,
"Is this motherfucker all right?"
you wouldn't have lost your units. Why is my sergeant so weak? I thought they were much stronger than this in feudal age. What am I missing?
And you
Am I
can
missing
tell.
something? I'm
You can
definitely
tell
missing something.
because I've never seen this on Trump's face ever. Trump had an actual eyebrow arc of concern. I've never seen him have that ever. He's never
So what we're
looked
gonna
his
do-
face to me as when he was looking at Biden.
I don't know if we're going to get away
next
with
to
it.
him
But that's
going,
what we're going to do. And then y'all are going to build that.
Like, it wasn't an act. Trump was genuinely wincing, which concerns me because he was the closest to him, which means something worse was going on in person close to him than what we even saw. We think we up close because the camera's zooming in. No. Trump hears him fighting to breathe.
All right. You
It felt
will be over there when
so
you're done.
terrible. It felt like when you're a kid, when you're a little kid, and you get into it with another little kid, and they're bullying you, right? And you tell that kid, "My dad could be your dad." And then maybe you go home, and maybe you go home with a shiner, maybe you go home with some cuts and bruises, and your dad asks what happened. And you're like, "Hey, this kid's been bullying me, right? And I tried to tell my teacher, and she didn't do anything." And so your dad's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to school. I'm gonna go to school tomorrow, we're gonna sort this out." And maybe he goes to pick you up and settle things up with the teacher right when the bully's dad comes and tries to settle things up
Did
with
I
the teacher
lose-
too.
Oh my
'cause his
God, can you
kid
please
told him a
finish
different
the
story,
wall?
you know? His
Guys.
kid told him, "Hey, this kid at school is being a bitch, so I had to hold him down," and everything's insane. And the teacher is like, "Look, everyone's here. Maybe we
I mean,
can
then
mediate."
again,
And so
it's
they
not
do
like,
that thing that schools
you know,
do
I'm
where they
overly
don't
protected.
really know how to help. Yeah, I mean, they're
I
just
see.
they're
So
just like,
we're
if
gonna
you
have
could
to build
stop, that'd be great.
John right here.
Or not, I didn't see it, so
Hurry,
whatever.
build
But don't
the
fight because we
oh
have a
my
zero
God.
tolerance policy on violence.
sure,
so even
please,
if you
just
fight
get in the
back,
way.
you're gonna get
Just
expelled.
get in
you
the
know what I
way
mean? So then
and
now
not
it's just
build it.
you and this kid that you know bullies you, and then him and his dad teaching him his ways, and your dad teaching you his ways, and now they're
And now,
outside, you know, and maybe your dad tries to
we
have
can
a
finally
heart to
get some
heart with
plate
the other
armor.
dad because both two dads of kids, and so he says to him, he's like, "Hey, look, can you?"
Aw, that's unfortunate.
It was 1969. And then the bully dad goes...
they went straight to Castle Age. That's gonna get me killed. Alright, well...
Is this motherfucker all right?
Our rush did not get very far.
It felt crazy. Because we knew. And we didn't know this exact thing would happen, but we knew we didn't feel good, and we knew we didn't feel good for months. You know what I mean? Before there was ever a debate. When we just knew it was going to be an election, we didn't feel good. That should tell everyone something. Not feeling good about an election that isn't even going to happen for another year, because we knew who the contenders were early on, right? Some people tried to run the Republican Party and they got washed, right? But we knew it was going to be Trump, and we knew it was going to be Biden for a very long time, and we didn't feel good since last year. And no one took that to heart, Republican or Democrat. People did not feel good, right?
All right, we're still in a good spot because we are
a year before
superior,
the wedding.
Eco. Right now, that's going to be
Because if
what.
so, maybe you shouldn't do it. You know? Maybe they're not the one.
That's what's going to keep us afloat for now.
We're not crazy. They're crazy.
Don't know why these sergeants are so weak.
Like, it's not us.
That I was not.
It's not us at all.
They were 12. They were hitting really hard when I faced them.
And that's the other thing that really stuck out to me is that, you know, no one really talks about Trump's performance because of Biden's, but Trump didn't do that well. There was a lot of like open lying to the point where where do you do in that situation? Like, everyone was kind of trashing the moderators for not doing some live fact checking in the moment. Sure, but what do you do when somebody lies that much, and how they lied, right? Because this is the thing. We found out last night that the tactics work. Trump lies fast. He talks so fast that when you hear the lie, you're like, but he didn't stutter, so it sounded kind of true. Like, I know it's not right because I was there. Because that's the other thing. He'll be lying about stuff that we were here. Like, we all remember him being president. We were here. So don't tell me it was different. I was then.
But we do want to go up, and because Biden, otherwise we're going to fall behind.
I'm assuming is trying
we're going to want to build
a
defensive castle.
He's saying...
Did I not build a bunch of stuff already?
But we found it that, like, you know, a fast lie beats an unintelligible
and we
truth.
are going to be able to build cav archers. I don't know if that's going to benefit us, but...
It does.
We're certainly going to try.
Even in your personal lives, it does. Let's say you're out with friends, right? Out with friends, and then let's say, you know, you've been bad.
We are getting attacked.
You've been terrible, even. You did a little cheating, right? And then you get caught, and now they're holding the cell phone in front of you.
Are you serious right now?
Right? And then you say,
I built the walls.
How am I supposed to know everybody that's in my phone? Do you know everybody that's in your phone? That's crazy. People got contacts in their phone all the time they don't remember. Sometimes I go through my phone and I look at my contacts and I'm like, who are these people? Who are any of these people? It's a lie.
So I guess the special unit defense also...
True. Like, do you remember every contact in your phone all the time? No. Or, let's say you were out and somebody tried to get you to be bad. They tried to get you.
Boy, no.
Try to get you to do some cheating. And you were like, no, I don't want to cheat. No, I love them. Get away from me, right? But later, let's say later, unbeknownst to you, one of your friends thinking they're doing you a favor or maybe playing around or playing too much, right? They hand your phone to that person and that person puts their number in your phone, right? So now when your partner is holding the phone to you, who is this in your phone? What's this number? And you try to tell the truth and you go,
I need you to go over there. Did they get stronger? They did get stronger. I thought so. Cool. That's fine. Now we're.
Cause before.
Now we just need to chase after them a little bit. Everybody needs to get out. Come on. Then we just go ahead.
1969.
And build a council. We also start building cav archers.
No. Because what
and
do we do
everything
now?
is fine.
What's the plan? You know what I mean? What's the plan? Are we just gonna move on like nothing happened? Or are we gonna just hope for the best? What's really the plan? Because we're acting as if there aren't other people that can run, and we're acting that way because of the circular thinking. Because
so they do 100% count as the special
people
unit.
in the DNC
So against
sometimes
the
I trash
Japanese,
them.
that is
But the thing
not
that they
gonna be
weren't
good.
wrong about is the
We will
reasoning that
lose
lets you
100%
land where
of the
you were
time.
before. It's not lazy.
That's not great.
It's not out
Hence
of
the
not
cav
caring.
archers.
It's out of not having a belief.
Exactly
and knowing
why we're doing
your
cav
options.
archers.
That's what happens, and it happened to both parties, by the way, right?
Where
it happened
can I put?
in both scenarios where there were people in the national conventions of these parties not really sure where to go from here.
Now we don't have wood.
And so you go with what worked last time, even if it's not going to work this time. You know, and I think it's tough.
Balancing
It's tough
eco,
when
also not fun.
you have something like that, right? Something where unequivocally we can all look at it and be like, yes, the man is old and maybe it wasn't his night, but this looks
So they obviously
very
have
bad
a
and it does not
castle. The
inspire
question is,
confidence
where
in
is
us.
the
It doesn't
castle?
inspire confidence in the people that we want to vote for this man. If nothing else, so the other man can't win, or because we really believe in the policies and the actions of this man, right? It doesn't help.
We'll sell
and then you
a little
have
bit.
people who
Give
are
us
those could-be
food. Oh,
contenders,
it's right there.
Because there's a conspiracy theory that I'd like to believe. And I'll share it with you, but I have no evidence for what I'm saying. There's a conspiracy that they wanted this debate. People in the DNC want this debate to be before the convention,
Can we
so that if he
please-
didn't perform well, there'd be time to rally behind someone else and replace him. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it looks like a setup. It looked like
I could have gone in. I did not realize that. So as soon as we get
looks
food
like
again,
a setup if I ever
we're gonna
seen
go
one.
in.
Like, you know, because the idea that he was at Camp David prepping for this debate for a week, and that they actually made him prep because he was hoarse. Why is this man hoarse? It's because they
so
had him
they
really
wanted to
talking
go
like he
imp
was
as
going to
well.
be out there dunking on Trump instead of
Each
just
town
giving him
center
a
spawns a
week-long
one-time
nap.
batch of 5 centers.
Let that man
That's
rest.
perfectly
Y'all
fine.
worked him so hard he showed up with a cold. Set him up to
Then-
fail, right? Because who else could it be, you know? Some people say Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom's a tough one, though, because then, right after the debate, Gavin Newsom goes up there and does a full-on Ron DeSantis. Because remember when Ron DeSantis was running against Trump, he just didn't want to say Trump's name yet. He was like, I'm not running yet, or whatever. And then it finally got time for them to run, and he announced. And then he had a little bit of momentum, but then he had to go toe-to-toe with Trump, and he didn't know how to do it, so he got aired out in front of everybody, right? I think Gavin Newsom had similar ideas. He was like, look, I'm going to support the president this time. I'm going to be in everybody's good graces. I'll run in 2028, right? But if there's ever a time, it's now. And it doesn't help when he goes on TV right after the debate and tries to negate everything that we just saw. Because it makes me trust him less. You know what I mean? When they're asking him, how do you feel about his performance? I mean, he's like, oh, come on, everyone has an off night.
There's some things you can't have an off night about.
That's happened to everybody. I've been alive for a while. That has not happened to me.
I guess we don't get to go heavy cav archer,
Or you get
though.
Gretchen Whitmer.
So I might be investing.
You know what I like about
poorly.
Gretchen Whitmer? Gretchen Whitmer would
So
be
in that
good
case-
because Gretchen Whitmer
probably going to go ahead and start doing something with stables. And hopefully this doesn't bite me.
Kidnap her, so that already right there is like that's a die of January 6th right there. So she has some experience, like when they come, you know what I mean?
But I do know that the Cav archers will work against infantry. I do know that for a fact. It's just a question of how well once they're fully upgraded.
Let me show you.
We need gold, and then... So it looks like we get our full cavalry upgrades.
Gary, I'm going to ask you to start out by just kind of explaining your old job. I mean, national security is, in pop culture, more closely associated with the CIA, right? But its hub really is at the Department of Justice. Explain why, and explain how Monday's decision makes that even more the case.
Desperately.
So, the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, they're part of the President's national security team, along with people like John Brennan, who is the director of the CIA, the director of our intelligence community agencies, and all of the national security agencies. And they sit together at the White House in the Situation Room in a SCIF, a sensitive compartment information facility, and talk about national security issues of all sorts of flavors on a daily basis. And the president seeks the advice not only of his legal advisor within the National Security Council, but also the advice of all of the principals who are part of that national security community. And the Department of Justice, also through its Office of Legal Counsel, is a really important part of ensuring that the proposals that are brought to the president, the policy proposals, the actions are consistent with law. That's domestic law and international law. And,
so those are just
I will tell you, in my experience, the premise that undergirds the majority opinion here, that in order for presidents to act fearlessly and boldly in our national security and other matters, they can't be chilled or cowed by the prospect of criminal prosecution. That's just not what is driving these discussions about how to respond to national security issues, whether they're defense-related issues, intelligence-related issues, terrorism issues, or so many other things that come before the National Security Council and the President on a daily basis. So this notion that you need to provide this broad criminal immunity
problem is that
to ensure that presidents can do their job, I think that's just a fiction. I think that was an excuse to write such a capacious ruling that expands presidential functions, what are called in this decision core executive functions that derive allegedly from the Constitution.
So
this capacious, expansive ruling really doesn't have any grounding in our constitutional text or our history, and it's not warranted by any kind of practical necessities. And one other thing I would say is this opinion also seems to assume that we have other functioning remedies for a president who does something that is so, meets the criteria that Justice Alito talked about. But those other methods, things like impeachment, those have failed us in recent years. So the notion that now there is no backstop, that's why you have people so concerned about this opinion.
So, Director Brennan, tell me how this happens operationally and functionally.
But
if the president
this is also
of the
in my
United
favor
States,
because
as Trump did last time he was president of the United States, wants to do something illegal.
All we got to do,
I think Don McGahn sometimes said, hey, no, that's illegal. He actually would write that down, have his note taker, Annie Donaldson, write it in her notes too, and then send him a memo saying you can't, for example, prosecute Hillary Clinton and Jim Comey because it's illegal. We know a little bit less about what he wanted to do at the intelligence agencies. We know a little bit more about what he wanted the military to do.
That is a lot of scorpions. Oh my God.
Migrants at other points, invoke the Insurrection Act, at other points seize voting machines. But if he's
the only
not
thing I can do here
by the fear of the consequences of criminality, what happens?
Well, a lot happens, and it's not good. it's hard to be shocked during these abnormal times, but I truly was shocked by the breadth of this Supreme Court ruling. As Mary noted, there are legions of lawyers in the government to ensure that all the actions that the government officials take are going to be legal. And when a president is going to authorize some type of action, whether it be a covert action or some type of military action, there is rigorous legal review that is done at the White House by the legal counsel, but also by the interagency lawyers group to ensure that every order that a president gives is going to be solidly anchored in the law. And this is not to protect a president's, eventual criminal liability. It's because, at least for the 6 presidents that I served, all of them wanted to make sure that everything that they did, everything that their administrations engaged in, was going to be lawful. And so the President of the United States is the chief executive of the executive branch. And so, as Mary's mentioned, the breadth of this ruling is really quite astounding. And I don't think the justices who voted in support of this ruling really understand the implications here. Because the president heads up all the departments and agencies.
I don't want to give away the
law enforcement, intelligence, homeland security. There are so many different opportunities for there to be some type of
if I can put a stop to that because he's not expecting it.
And as was pointed out in your
or maybe he was expecting
it's possible that a president could in fact issue preemptive pardons to those
he's at full 200 pop then.
Who carry out this unlawful act that a president alone is immunized against some type of liability, but they are not unless they actually are giving a presidential pardon. So again, the scope of this, the implications of this, especially if a lawless, corrupt president is going to be in the White House, it is really
we can bait a few of them over here, I guess.
Frank, we also cover Trump like he's a question mark. He's an answer. He's answered it. He wanted to break the laws. He wanted to have evidence manufactured. He wanted Don McGahn to make up things that didn't exist to get out of criminal exposure.
Can we raid at all?
He wanted Border Patrol agents to do illegal things, and he dangled pardons in front of them. We also know what he already did at his Department of Justice when it came to wiretaps. We found out at the end of his presidency, he was listening to all manner of journalists. He was listening to lawmakers. What does this absence of any semblance of criminality, how do you assess what Trump would do in a second term with all of the awesome powers of the FBI?
Yeah, as you said, he's told us what he's going to do. He's already done some of it, as it's engraved in over the National Archives.
What even can we get rid of at this point?
The past is prologue.
For gold.
Exactly. The past will tell us where we're going in the future with him. And I often think, as I'm contemplating what the impact is on the national security community with
there is definitely very little that we can do to die.
First, my reaction was, boy, we're going to have a lot of people in the intelligence community doing unlawful things. But then I stopped myself and I reread the opinion, and it's worse than that because we've redefined what lawful means in this ruling. So, we're all worried, it's going to be unlawful, we'll have unlawful. No, if the president says it's lawful, it's in the scope of his official duties, his core duties, he's consulted with his attorney general or his
so cav
Department
archers
of Defense
normally is a counter to that if you can get heavy cav archers.
Lawful. So
because they just do more damage.
Acts that I'm worried about. It's the so-called lawful acts that he's going to go forward with. And with regard to Sam Alito's concept that, the dissenters are just talking about extreme hypotheticals, none of this is hypothetical. We need only go back in history to the mid-1970s and the discovery in America that the FBI and the CIA were spying unlawfully on our citizens domestically, and then the Senate had to convene something called the Church Committee, named after Senator Frank Church. And what did that committee, which sat for over a year, what did they discover? There was systematic spying outside of all judicial rulings, no court authorizations. There were black bag jobs, which means break-ins and illegal search warrants by the FBI.
That's what I was saying about Trump. He likes to lie so fast and so much that it's hard to fact check him. Yeah, it's called a gish
including
gallop.
Martin Luther King, including trying to convince him to kill himself.
It's not limited to just lying during debates. It's also
findings. that coordinating with an intel unit at Chicago
it's
PD
also
to actually murder a
corruption
Black Panthers
and all those
leader,
other activities
right?
as
all
well.
All of this extrajudicial, there were no rules. So when
Who's
anybody
going
says, "Oh, don't
Portuguese?
worry
What
about
counters
it,
Portuguese?
things will
Well,
work
what do
out."
the Portuguese
we've
even
been there.
get?
We've been there, and now we have
Gunpowder.
rules that came out of that church committee that actually are
They
the
get to
operating
build the
guidelines
organ gun?
for the FBI, for the CIA. But things had to
Okay,
get
and gunpowder
very
units are
ugly,
more
literally
accurate. Well, then I'll go
murdering
Spaniards.
somebody deemed a threat because the FBI director thought the guy was a threat. That's where we're headed here.
It is
That's
the
a
single most
classic
important
matchup,
decision
right?
in what could be the single most important election
Or 30%
in the
faster.
history of the story of our country. One that will
Blacksmith
affect our
upgrades don't
children
cost
and their
gold.
children
Gunpowder
and
units
generations
fire
beyond.
faster. Receive
And
20
with
gold
so
for each
much on the
technology
line,
researched.
Whatever President Joe Biden decides
we
to do
get
with
conks.
his campaign, to buck up or bow out, what he decides will shape the course of our American future, our American story. And let us underscore one part of what we just said. Whatever Joe Biden decides, that's where this decision lies, according to all the available reporting, with one person, President Joe Biden. Now, given the stakes, it's natural
So why would he go
to
south?
hunger to know what comes next. But the
Infantry,
truth is, no one really knows
siege.
what comes next. And that appears to include the president himself.
I think
at this
he's going to
hour.
try and do
we,
that.
as humans, are not good at
rush
this,
again
the
with
unknowing
scorpions.
part. Joe Biden has more than earned the right to some space and some grace to do what he's doing right now. To try to reassure his campaign, to make calls to allies, to talk to his family, to sit with the data. We were told by officials that the data will shape and drive his next
Oh
moves.
my God, I
New York
pressed
Times
this
reported
button.
today, citing a single anonymous source, that the president told a key ally
We
that
get
he
a
knows he
10-month
may not
or
be
a
able to
10-minute
salvage
treaty.
his candidacy if he cannot convince the public
So we can
in the
get to
coming
feudal
days
age?
that he's up for the job after a disastrous debate performance last week. We should tell you, NBC News has not confirmed that conversation. The White House this afternoon vehemently denying it took place. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre calling the New York Times reporting
Did we
absolutely false.
miss out on
But where even a
the,
week ago we might have dismissed such a report out of hand, now it just
whatchamacallit,
adds to this feeling
the
of
comedian?
uncertainty in this moment.
Is that already
For
done?
his part, the president, who now suggests that his debate
And why is the
performance
piggy thing not
was the
working? Can you
result of
only
global travel,
affect,
is going about his normal presidential
units
duties.
once?
This hour, he's expected to award posthumous
I would
medals
rather
of
have the
honor
symbol
to a pair of Civil
than
War heroes.
the thing over
We'll
their
show that
head.
to you when it
Or,
happens
yeah.
later this evening.
I'd rather
he will
have the
meet with
symbol over their
Democratic
head than them
governors
look
virtually
different.
and in person on this very topic, the state of his campaign.
Where are my sheep?
His staff is also trying to reassure others and themselves, apparently, that Biden 2024 is still all systems go. This afternoon, the campaign held an all-staff call with the president and vice president on that call. The topic was staying the course. That message, though, might best be directed at President Joe Biden's big donors today. Many of them have been waiting for reliable, accurate polling data before plotting their next choices, their path forward. Today, they got some of that. New data from the New York Times indicates that among likely voters, Donald Trump, who was already ahead,
Still don't see
expanded
the
his
sheep.
lead over Joe Biden by 6
That's
points following the
fantastic.
debate. Among
By
registered voters, that
fantastic, I
margin
mean that's
balloons
crap.
to 9 points. The figures on your screen are rounded outside of the slightly smaller margin of error. Notably, Donald Trump, a wannabe dictator
Just go
who
ahead
isn't
and
hiding
build
it,
it while I'm
with
thinking
a
about it.
reflexive habit of posting everything and anything at
There's
all
my
hours
sheep.
of the day, true or false, has been practically silent about the future and fate of Joe Biden's candidacy on social media. Whatever the reason for that, the threat he poses looms large and is not lost on President Biden's circle. As elected Democrats try to figure out what comes next, listen to how Congressman Jamie Raskin, one of the Democratic
We just need
Party's
to find out
most
where he
influential
is.
voices, describes this moment to our colleague Chris Hayes.
There will be lots of discussion and lots of people weighing in. And I know this is a moving target. It's got to happen quickly. But I can guarantee you, Chris Hayes, there will be massive unity and focus on that task when we get to the end of this process.
Every passing minute brings us closer to the Democratic National Convention and then to Election Day after that. So it's worth repeating. This is a profoundly consequential and sober moment in American political history. And to borrow a favorite phrase from President Joe Biden, quote, "That's not hyperbole." It's where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. The host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC, the president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton is here. Plus, senior opinion writer and columnist for the Boston Globe, MSNBC political analyst Kim Atkins-Storr is here. DNC senior analyst Matt Dowd is here.
Whatever.
I would like to ask all of you. First, I want to thank all of you for being here. This is a story that feels like it antagonizes a lot of our audience. It's a very hard story to tell. I have mountains of admiration for the president and his family and what they've sacrificed in the spirit of public service. I also have the duty to cover this story wherever it goes, and I appreciate all of you being here. You don't have to be here, and I appreciate all of you being here.
That would be a very dick thing to do. What I do want to do,
the
however,
reporting, and then ask all of you to sort of help us make sense of it for our audience. President Obama, Rev, is reported to be looking at what I understand the White House is looking at, the data. And this is what the Washington Post reports. Quote, former President Barack Obama has privately told allies who have reached out to him that President Biden's already tough path to re-election grew more challenging after his shaky debate performance on Thursday. A harsher assessment of the presidential race in his public comments, according to several people familiar with his remarks. The White House was reported to have been waiting for this New York Times poll, which is why we led with it as well. And it is another blow, if you will, for the state of the presidential race.
Well, I think that aside from the polling, which could go up and down given whatever happens in the next few days, but I think that I certainly agree with those that say Joe Biden deserves the right and space to make his decision. Look at what he's been able to do as president. And I think he should not be rushed into a decision one way or another. Secondly, I think that we're on the eve of the 4th of July. When we saw what the Supreme Court just did in terms of the powers of a presidency, I don't know how we celebrate the 4th tomorrow without really making a campaign issue. Can we even risk having someone who has openly said he wanted to be a dictator on day one, openly said he wants retribution, to sit in that chair while we have a constitutional crisis with this right-wing Supreme Court? So I think more than the New York Times poll, the Supreme Court decision changed everything for a lot of people. We cannot risk that. Whatever the president decides, and I certainly think it's an awful standard to have, say, now one bad debate, now you're out of the race. I don't know whether we can sustain that throughout the rest of presidential history, that now if you just blow it one time, you're out of the race, unless there are other underlying circumstances. But I think the Supreme Court decision has to be front and center, and I think media needs to talk more about that than to talk about some debate and the polling, because America changed yesterday, and we get ready to have barbecue when the Supreme Court has just barbecued our rights.
Does that, I appreciate your point. I agree with your point. We spend a lot more time on the Supreme Court than we have on the state of any race, the presidential or otherwise, Rev. So I associate myself with your opinions on this. But I want to ask you what conversations you're having.
I'm having conversations with a lot of people, some off the record, and most of them have said that they think that President Biden will carry on and he will go forward. I've also had some that say
why is it not rotating?
That he will go forward. I've not had any civil rights leaders or people that I've talked to in government that said he should step aside. But even more telling, I do a syndicated radio show every day, and I maybe had one caller out of 50 or more that I handle over 2 days or 3 days, maybe 20 callers a day. Only one has said he ought to step aside. I think that the public really became incensed at a lot of what Donald Trump had to say. This whole thing of black jobs and the lies he told. I think, and many of them watch your show and talk about how you fairly parsed that out, because people are ignoring the offensive stuff that was said. I was disturbed when Joe Biden couldn't finish one or two sentences. I was more disturbed with the sentences Donald Trump did finish.
Yeah, it's a great way. It's a great way to underscore what is actually in front of the voters. Matt Dowd, it was your job to read polls, and I have to say, to the Rev's point, if a debate performance shaped presidential political history, George Bush never would have been elected.
Because that's how you play
his first debate.
Spanish. You gotta
at least 2 of 3 of the debates against John Kerry.
He knows that.
So that
I
is
know
also
that.
true.
He's gonna rush me. Now,
I don't want to ignore
I don't know what we're
going to
do about
I
that.
care a lot less about what the press is saying, what the polls are saying. But it is
But
also
we're gonna do
true,
our best.
and it is a painful truth, that there are a lot of people concerned, not just about a debate performance, but about Joe Biden's age. What is your counsel for this campaign in this White House?
Well, I'm really glad we're having this conversation, and I'm really glad you started it off about saying that we need to give Joe Biden grace and space. I think we all deserve grace and space at any moment in our life, and so especially the President of the United States. I mean, I think what this has done is it's elicited an incredible emotional response.
We are neck and neck in points
in this moment because the
that probably
stakes
means
are so
we're neck
high.
and neck in eco.
And in many people's minds, especially the people that are watching the show, our democracy is at stake. And as the Reverend said, the Supreme Court decision even underlined that even more, because basically it's the Supreme Court said that Donald Trump wants to be a dictator, and we're going to let him be a dictator. That's basically what the Supreme Court allowed and said and gave permission for in the course of this, which is incredibly scary, and it's understandably emotionally in the course of this. To me, there's two separate issues to look at. The one, the grace and space for the president, and I, for one, am not one that calls for that he needs to step down.
No, that was me.
Or I don't think others should that don't have influence over the process or over his decision. It's going to be his decision and his decision alone, and there's very few people that will have influence over him, to him, in that process in the course of this. One,
I don't know if we're going to get scout rushed. I doubt it.
Alter the course of what Biden does in the course of this. And so,
do a lot better
I think
than
many of us and pundits, if we get out there and say he should step back, it's actually going to have the reverse effect of what people want, because I think people are going to dig in the course of this.
So, Kim, the piece of it that I think is so traumatic for the Biden coalition, which is the only political coalition in our country's history that defeated Trumpism and Trumpists, is that there is no symmetry. There's no remorse. Mitch McConnell, who referred Donald Trump criminally for prosecution, which he couldn't even do now because of the Supreme Court he had as strong of a hand in shaping as anyone other than Donald Trump, said presidents are immune. They just fell back into line. They already function as though they live in an autocracy.
He definitely played that correctly.
Leader.
We knew it was going to happen.
This sort of raw
we knew it was going to
happen. That I think
it was just a matter of being able to survive.
Is also this feeling of just how brutally unfair the process is. There's a lot of hatred for the media. I don't know what other word to use. But people should know that the Biden high command is engaging with the media. I mean, this is not a story that's been fabricated, but it is a story.
We are not going to be able to fight the man at arms.
To a lot of folks in the Biden coalition.
But the goal
that may be
here
true.
is to get our wood supply up.
The difference between Republicans and Democrats is that Donald Trump could have fallen
and build
unconscious
as
on that
much
stage
defense as we
and
can.
Still gotten the support of Republicans that he has now. That solid support that allowed him to coast to the nomination. Democrats, listen, it is not my job to be a spokesperson for Democrats. It's my job to say what is needed to protect our democracy from the existential threat that is Donald Trump, and that is voting for Democrats right now. And right now, instead of rallying behind the president or even saying, I support the president or whoever the nominee will be, and in this moment, you have Democrats, not just privately, but publicly bickering and fighting with one another about what should be done now, this far past the primary. When what is the alternative? Nobody is asking. The question is, okay, what if Biden steps aside? What now? Have we seen how Democrats handle open conventions or anything close to that? Do we remember 1968 When Johnson decided not to run again, how did that end? That ended with the election of Richard Nixon. Did we see 1980 when jittery Democrats thought maybe that Ted Kennedy can come to the rescue? How did that end? With the inauguration of Ronald Reagan. Even in 2016, not an open convention, Hillary Clinton won it. I was there in Philadelphia when you had so many Bernie Sanders delegates booing and crying and kvetching as she accepted the nomination, many of those doing things like voting for Jill Stein. And how did that end? With the election of Donald Trump. Jill Stein got more votes in Michigan than the difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in that state. Democrats don't do that well. What Democrats need to do is take a page from Republicans and say, we understand the existential threat that we are facing. We are seeing a presidential candidate who already is saying he will be a dictator from day one and who believes falsely
we are doing
that
that
the Supreme
well,
Court just gave him absolute
but
immunity.
we are certainly behind from our goal,
cognitively bragged
which is,
about
of course,
being able to say person, man,
building
woman,
a
camera,
castle.
TV, but who stood on television and told everyone to inject disinfectant
and
is now doing campaign rallies about, I don't know, electrical currents and sharks. And nobody is doing an hour-long press conference asking him about that, the way we saw the hour-long press conference asking 1,000 ways about Joe Biden's cold. Democrats need to buck up, look at the threat, and fight against that threat and stop fighting against each other. Our democracy depends on it.
Oh, I'm red. I was like, oh no, I'm getting attacked.
Kim, I'm going to need you to say a little more.
Listen, it's just really frustrating.
We're gonna come back.
Because I understand what people saw in that debate. And I understand exactly what Matt said. What that did was confirm a narrative. But who spun that narrative about Joe Biden not being fit for the job? Republicans did. His opponents did. And what Democrats are doing now is confirming that based on their reactions to what's happening. Listen, I get donors with all their money who get jittery when
what we want is a castle.
And I even also get elected lawmakers who are so focused on their own re-elections
to build that castle
Joe Biden,
on top
that
of our stone mine.
But we need everyone, including the press, to speak very clearly about the threat that we are facing. And that is a threat to democracy itself. Have we forgotten that Donald Trump
and we are going to boom to our heart's content?
Have we forgotten that he has been found by a court to be a sexual abuser? Have we forgotten all of the racist, xenophobic, and nonsensical things he has said? Have we forgotten how fearful he was when he was at the helm of a pandemic response?
And we're going to build a castle in our
for
eco.
Democrats. Have we forgotten that
just need to get that far.
A candidate who has had a successful administration, who has seen wages rise, who has seen inflation fall? Yes, it's not fast enough for everybody. It's not perfect.
Let's go ahead and build
Our
that
economy
right
is
there.
not perfect. But I remember during the Trump administration when every economist was promising us that we would have a post-pandemic recession. Guess what? We didn't have any. Guess what? People had their student loans forgiven.
So now
Guess
we
what?
have
We have fewer
our
border crossings right now. When
comps being
Republicans
built.
refuse to back border security because Donald Trump told them not to. We also have a vice president who we haven't even mentioned yet, Kamala Harris, who stands ready should anything, God forbid, happen to Joe Biden. She stands ready to step in. She will stand ready to step in next term too. And all of this talk about him stepping aside because he can't perform 4 more years is tremendously disrespectful to her. What I want is
Why
for
are you
Democrats
not
to get a grip
repairing?
and to
Is
fight.
what I'd like
That
to
is
know.
what this moment needs, not hand-wringing and public bickering about this.
Mary, I'm going to ask you to start out by just kind of explaining your old job. I mean, national security is in pop culture more closely associated with the CIA, right? But its hub really is at the Department of Justice. Explain why and explain how Monday's decision makes that even more the case.
So, the Department of Justice, the
we
Attorney
build our
General,
castle,
Deputy Attorney
please?
General, they're part of the president's national security team, along with people like John Brennan when he was the director of the CIA, the director of our intelligence community agencies, and all of the national security agencies. And they sit together at the White House in the Situation Room in a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility, and talk about national security issues of all sorts of flavors on a daily basis. this. And the president seeks the advice not only of his legal advisor within the National Security Council, but also the advice of all of, the principals who are part of that national security community. And the Department of Justice, also through its Office of Legal Counsel, is a really important part of ensuring that the proposals that are brought to the president, the policy proposals, the actions are consistent with law. That's domestic law and international law. And I will tell you, in my experience, the premise that undergirds the majority opinion here, that in order for presidents to act fearlessly and boldly in our national security and other matters, they can't be chilled or cowed by the prospect of criminal prosecution. That's just not what is driving these discussions about how to respond to national security issues, whether they're defense-related issues, intelligence-related issues, terrorism issues, or so many other things that come before the National Security Council and the President on a daily basis. So this notion that you need to provide this broad criminal
He might be going to imp. He's done it before.
To ensure that presidents can do their job, I think that's just a fiction. I think that was an excuse to write such a capacious ruling that expands presidential functions, what are called in this decision core executive functions that derive allegedly from the Constitution. This capacious, expansive ruling really doesn't have any grounding in our constitutional text or our history, and it's not warranted by any kind of practical necessities. And one other thing I would say is this opinion also seems to assume that we have other functioning remedies for a president who does something that is so, meets the criteria that Justice Alito talked
I thought
about.
maybe I was getting attacked.
But those other methods, things like impeachment, those have failed us in recent years. So the notion that now there is no backstop, that's why you have people so concerned about this opinion.
So, Director Brennan, tell me how this happens operationally and functionally. If the President of the United States, as Trump did last time he was President of the United States, wants to do something illegal, and his lawyers, I think Don McGahn, sometimes said, hey, no, that's illegal.
I think it's pretty safe to say he's just going to go imp on us.
Donaldson write it in her notes, too.
At least that's what I'm thinking he's doing.
Saying you can't, for example, prosecute Hillary
Could very well
Clinton
be wrong
because it's illegal. We know a little bit less about what he wanted to do at the intelligence agencies. We know a little bit more about what he wanted the military to do. At some points, jail migrants. At other points, invoke the Insurrection Act. At other points, seize voting machines. But if he's not stopped by the fear of the consequences of criminality, what happens?
Just harass and see what happens.
Well, a lot happens, and it's not good. It's hard to be shocked during these abnormal times, but I truly was shocked by the breadth of this Supreme Court ruling. As Mary noted, there are legions of lawyers in the government to ensure that all the actions that the government officials take are going to be legal. And when a president is going to authorize some type of action, whether it be a covert action or some type of military action, there is rigorous legal review that is done at the White House by the legal counsel, but also by the interagency lawyers group to ensure that every order that a president gives is going to be solidly anchored in the law. And this is not to protect a president's, eventual criminal liability.
Deal with that.
It's because at least for the 6 presidents that I served, all of them wanted to make sure that everything that they did, everything that their administrations engaged in, was going to be lawful. And so the President of the United States is the chief executive of the executive branch. And so, as Mary's mentioned, the breadth of this ruling is really quite astounding. And I don't think the justices who voted in support of this ruling really understand the implications here. Because the president heads up all the departments and agencies in terms of military personnel, law enforcement, intelligence, homeland security. There are so many different opportunities for there to be some type of nefarious action that a president would authorize. And as was pointed out in your lead-in, it's possible that a president
he went imp
could, in
after
fact,
all. Okay.
issue preemptive pardons to those individuals who would carry out this unlawful act that a president alone is immunized against some type of liability, but they are not unless they actually are giving a presidential pardon. So again, the scope of this, the implications of this, especially if a lawless, corrupt president is going to be in the White House, it is really quite chilling in terms of what could happen.
You know, Frank, we also cover Trump like he's a question mark. He's an answer. He's answered it. He wanted to break the laws. He wanted to have evidence manufactured. He wanted Don McGahn to make up things that didn't exist to get out of criminal exposure with Mueller. He wanted Border Patrol agents to do illegal things, and he dangled pardons in front of them. We also know what he already did at his Department of Justice when it came to wiretaps. We found out at the end of his presidency that he was listening to all manner of journalists. He was listening to lawmakers. What does this absence of any semblance of fear of criminality, how do you assess what Trump would do in a second term with all of the awesome powers of the FBI?
Yeah, as you said, he's told us what he's going to do. He's already done some of it. As it's engraved in over the National Archives in Washington, the past is prologue. Exactly. The past will tell us where we're going in the future with him. And I often think, you know, as I'm contemplating what the impact is on the national security community with this ruling, at first my reaction was, boy, we're going to have a lot of people in the intelligence community doing unlawful things. But then I stopped myself and I reread the opinion, and it's worse than that because we've redefined what lawful means in this ruling. So, you know, we're all worried, oh, it's going to be unlawful, oh, we'll have unlawful. No, if the president says it's lawful, it's in the scope of his official duties, his core duties, he's consulted with his attorney general or his Department of Defense secretary, then it could be deemed lawful. So it's not the unlawful acts that I'm worried about. It's the so-called lawful acts that he's going to go forward with. And with regard to Sam Alito's concept that, oh, the dissenters are just talking about extreme hypotheticals, none of this is hypothetical. We need only go back in history to the mid-1970s and the discovery in America that the FBI and the CIA were
which we just got. We talked about that earlier today
on our citizens domestically, and then the Senate had to convene something called the Church Committee.
I
named
really
after Senator
can't switch
Francis.
this right
and
now,
what did
though.
that committee, which sat for over a year,
I am definitely
what did they discover? There was
caught up in
systematic
this.
spying outside of all judicial rulings, no court authorizations. There were black bag jobs, which means break-ins and illegal search warrants by the FBI. There was wiretapping, unlawful wiretapping of anybody deemed a threat by J. Edgar Hoover, including Martin Luther King, including trying to convince King to kill himself,
Now we know.
including the FBI, by most historians now, findings, that coordinating with
We
an
100%
intel unit
know
at
that
Chicago
there's-
PD to actually murder a
That's what
Black
we wanted to
Panthers
see.
leader. Right? All of this extrajudicial, there were no rules. So when anybody says, oh, don't worry about it,
Get the
things will
onagers.
work out. No, we've been there. We've been there. And now we have rules that came out of that Church Committee that actually are the operating guidelines for the FBI, for the CIA. But things had to
That
get
is what we
very
wanted.
ugly, literally murdering somebody deemed a threat because the FBI director thought the guy was a threat. That's where we're headed here.
Well, and with Trump, there's always a projection.
So the problem
right?
is they got
it always
onagers.
struck me as bizarre
That is definitely the
he
problem.
described the court-approved search of Mar-a-Lago to retrieve classified
What we're gonna have
material
to do,
they'd asked
unfortunately,
for
is bait.
somewhere between 8 and 15 times.
And that
a
is
quote,
easier
assassination
said than done.
It's clear that Trump already thinks along these lines. What has to be considered a threat that they would have to contend with inside the FBI right now if Trump's reelected, Frank?
Well, the first thing among the first things that Trump is going to do, of course, is replace the FBI director, even though, by the way, he's a Republican and a Federalist Society member. But, you know, well, he's not moving quickly enough or as radical enough for for Trump. So he'll go. But beyond that, you're going to see the top echelon of the intelligence agencies, the inspectors general, the DNI, all pledge loyalty to Trump. Their rank and file may lose their civil service protection, so they'll be extremely fearful. And I'm telling you, if you think Trump's threats and intimidations have not impacted decision-making, just look back at the Washington Post reporting about searching or not searching Mar-a-Lago and realize that they were yelling at each other, DOJ and FBI executives, about, this isn't going to happen on my watch. So, talk to Andy McCabe, as I did just a couple of days ago on my YouTube show, who's being threatened by Steve Bannon to charge him on some bogus charges and extradite him if he flees the country. How do you put mechanisms in place right now to stop that from happening? I don't have an answer to that.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.
Too bad all this is going to be really expensive to upgrade.
Well, then leave for gas. Your money, your move. The Venmo debit card.
Okay, now we're pop capped. There we go.
Folks.
That is part of what we wanted.
Folks. She shouldn't be allowed to run. There's virtually no doubt that FBI Director Comey and the great special agents of the FBI will be able
we are
to
definitely going to do that.
more than enough evidence.
That's only going to
garner
extremely help
indictments
us
against Hillary Clinton and her inner circle, despite her efforts to disparage them and to discredit them. If she were to win this election, it would create an unprecedented constitutional
I don't know how we
crisis.
start tackling this problem,
In that
though.
situation,
Because I don't
we could very well
have...
have a sitting president
How
under
about this?
felony indictment and ultimately
We're going to just see if we can sneak in there.
it would grind government to a halt.
Well, that was then candidate Donald Trump just 3 days before the 2016 election, saying the president under felony indictment would grind the government to a halt and create a constitutional crisis. He got the premise right, just the players wrong, as he is now the first former U.S. president and candidate to be convicted of a crime.
I mean, this is what he said. She should not be able to run. It would create an unprecedented constitutional crisis if someone with a felony was running for president and got elected. It would grind government to a halt. Also, taking note that at that time, Donald Trump actually didn't despise the FBI and hate the FBI. He actually loved the FBI because it solved situations, just like he loves this country in a situational way, just like too many of his supporters only love this country.
That's definitely not great.
Donald
We're
Trump
losing our
is president of the
castles.
United States, and if
Then we need to
Donald
build them
Trump's not the president
defensively
of the
just so we can
United
build units.
They turn on the men and the women of the FBI. They turn on America. They turn on American democracy. They say this country is horrible. It's all very situational.
We definitely need to go
Not the way I
elites.
was raised. I love this country. Turn flags upside down. If my candidate doesn't win, I don't lie for 4 years and say my candidate really won elections. It's crazy, but she would be unable to, she should not be able to run an unprecedented constitutional crisis.
The country would grind to a halt.
I mean, so the question, Mika, is really here. Again, it's never about Trump.
No.
It's about... How's it going on?
Just getting your coffee hot.
Oh, you want
And
it
I don't know
You
how to
want it
select
hot.
my villagers, so that's certainly not helping anything.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's very kind.
You're welcome. Someone's got to do
You
it.
must have thought I was lagging here and I wasn't awake enough. But, I mean, it's not Donald Trump that we're surprised by. It's the people that continue to follow a guy who is so clearly a hypocrite, who's so clearly a situation, who goes from saying he loves the country in the world to saying America is great again, and then when he loses, saying he did lose and America's a terrible country again. And, you know, his family calls this country a shithole country. America, the greatest country on the face of the earth. By just about every measure. I believe that. I love America. And I love America. I love America. I don't see it through the prism of who's sitting in the White House on whether this is a great country or not. It's a great country. Sometimes I think some presidents are better than others, but my God, it's staggering.
Yeah.
That Donald Trump's supporters convince themselves they hate America because Donald Trump says he hates America because America is weak. And they rag on the military all the time. They say it's weak and what? We've got the most powerful military in the world. They rag on our economy, saying our economy's terrible. Some saying, oh, it's going toward a depression. We have the strongest economy.
I don't know how you defeat a siege onager push.
It's not a close up.
We're being honest.
America's more powerful today than it has been in a very long time, relative to the rest of the world. That's just the reality of it.
Despite what you think of Joe Biden, but I think the thing that's most troubling and scary and frightening about this and deadly serious is the Republican Party and the RNC. That part of this equation is where we don't know how this ends.
It's sad, and it's sad primarily for the Republican Party because they're going to lose again. And after all these years of losing from 2017 through 2023, Jonathan Lemire, you think they would have learned by now? I'm dead serious here. You think they would, occasionally some people will get on other shows and say, they're always attacking the Republicans. I'm here.
Did we actually get through the push? Holy shit.
Since 2016, trying to save the Republican Party.
What are you guys doing?
They haven't listened, and they've lost. They didn't listen in 2017, and they lost. They didn't listen in 2018, and they lost. They didn't listen in 2019, and they lost. 2020, they lost. 21, they lost. 22, 23, they lost. And so they always think they're so clever. They always think they're so tough. All they are, they're the 1962 New York Mets. And at some point, somebody needs to wake up and go, hey guys, we suck at this game of politics. We need a new manager.
So
think of the moments that Republicans could have cut Donald Trump loose.
Don't know what we do now.
Right after
we don't let them do a siege onager push again. Jesus.
Right after January 6th and that subsequent impeachment trial, when it did seem like he was at
we
his
definitely cannot
they chose not to
survive
the January
that
6th committee hearings
again.
All that was resurfaced for national
they've probably taken all the gold that we can
after
possibly think of here.
2022 midterms, when Trump's candidates, particularly for the Senate, lost, where Donald Trump lost, and people were questioning whether he should even run again.
Okay,
he rushed his campaign announcement.
Absolutely
and there was a sense
died.
he was doing so to try to avoid prosecution, that it wasn't actually being anything good for the party. They could have done it then. They chose not to. And now, during the primary process, they could have gone another direction. Trump refused to even debate his rivals. Republicans chose not to. E. Jean Carroll, and now this. A moment where there's a criminal conviction, and not only are Republicans not cutting Donald Trump loose, they're wrapping themselves even tighter to him. With very few exceptions, Republicans have come out in recent days and denounced this as a travesty of justice, rallied behind Donald Trump, and suggested that this was a Department of Justice witch hunt, that it was a political prosecution, and they have attached their fate to his yet again. And there is no sense that that's going to change between now and November. And we are seeing, as we'll get into this morning, some early polls that suggest modest but real movement away from Trump after this conviction, their warning signs are there for these Republicans, and they're ignoring them.
And that's the thing, Mika, is maybe Marco Rubio thinks attacking juries plays well with his base. I'm not so sure. I think most Americans respect other Americans that sit for 6 weeks, do a good job. Even Trump's own attorney said the jury was serious, they did a good job. But
paid attention.
They paid attention, and he did not find fault with them at all. He said that they paid attention and did their job. But you get Marco Rubio and other Republicans who, again, because they want Donald Trump to notice them, attack an institution like America's jury system, and then compares the United States of America, the USA, compares us to Castro's communist Cuba. It is, what's happened to Marco Rubio? Where is he? Because that is so deeply unsettling, not for us, for him, for the Republican Party, for the people who vote for him, for the people who vote for this Republican Party. Because you're losing when you talk this way, when you attack the rule of law, when you attack the FBI, when you attack jurors. Maybe you get $25 in fundraising, blitzes, but you lose independent voters. You lose swing voters in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania, and you lose elections. And they keep doing this, and they keep losing elections. And I wonder, how long can they keep going off the cliff for this guy?
At some point, people who are cluing into this election, which historically starts to happen in the months and days before an election, they're going to see all these Republicans saying this is the Biden Justice Department. They're going to be parroting Trump, who says it's Biden, it's Biden. Well, Hunter Biden is going to court. So Biden must be the worst co-opter of the Justice Department on earth if this is the Biden Justice Department.
Oh, did they just really build a castle right there?
There's no evidence
That's
of
hilarious.
that in this New York criminal trial.
Oh no, I got baited into
Trump
the castle.
Was convicted
That's what happened.
of 34 felony counts. 34 across the board from beginning to end. Every single count was guilty. That's resounding. So, good luck with that argument. It only lasts until people start reading. New polling from ABC News and Ipsos is giving us our first snapshot at how independent voters feel about last week's verdict. Although 45% say the verdict was politically motivated, more than half of all independents, 52%, believe the jury reached the right conclusion and think it should end Donald Trump's 2024 campaign. Those numbers are even higher among the voters with unfavorable opinions of both Trump and President Joe Biden, those so-called double haters. Among that group, 65% say the verdict was correct, and 67% say it should end Trump's bid for the White House. So they appear to agree with Donald Trump. How we came in on the show here.
Yeah, so Sam Stein, we're looking at this double haters. Everybody's talking about the double haters, people that don't like Biden, people that don't like Trump. It's actually, if you dig into that, they are, of course, pollsters say they're the most important group. If you dig into it, you actually get a lot of animosity towards Donald Trump, and with Joe Biden, it's like, it's too old. He's all right. He's good. Haters actually is a bit of a misnomer, but they always seem to break overwhelmingly Biden's way, and here we see it again. 67% of this undecided group that's going to determine the outcome of the election think that the convictions should end Donald Trump's campaign. What say you, Mr. Stein?
Well, I think it's an alarming number if you're Donald Trump, obviously. You can't afford to bleed that type of support anywhere. But that block in particular, you need to break to use specifically, right? I mean, he's going to win his voters. We know that. What he really needs in this election is those people who are on the fence, maybe a little bit wary of Joe Biden, breaking all the way his way. That said, I'm going to hold my judgments for polls that
That's
are not
all you're going to do?
snapshot polls. That's right after the
Where's
verdict.
the actual
people may be reacting to the news. We're also 5 months out. As Jonathan pointed out, rightfully at the top of this, we have a lengthy history of people circling back towards Trump after egregious, seemingly crippling political moments, January 6th top among them. So let's wait and see and be sober about these polling numbers. I will say...
Oh, there's the problem, though. His eco is very protected by these
Donald Trump
castles.
to have 34 guilty
Could
counts
maybe
against
try
him.
and sneak around
It's
in
not
there?
something that any candidate would want. I think he's trying to turn it into some sort of political favor. I don't think it's ignorance that other Republicans are comparing it to the show trials of the Stalin era. I think they know exactly what they're doing. They're not ignorant of it. They're trying to discredit the justice system because that's the card that they have to play here. The question, Joe, that you raised is, will the public, or at least will a good portion of the public, look at that and say, you know what? I'm all for it. Or will they say, you know what? Our foundational system of government and the rule of law is too important. And it was telling to me that when Joe Biden came out and offered his first remarks on the
That's
trial
probably
last week, he did not go after the substance of the verdict.
That's
No one
not going to
expected him
feel
do
good.
that.
We're
What he
not.
did is
We're
he
not going to
got
come back
really
from that
heated
easily.
About the efforts by Republicans to undermine faith in the rule of law. And I think that's what he wants to point his
that hurt a
anger,
little bit.
and that's the case he wants to make heading into the election.
Yeah, and the politics of this are going to be so fascinating.
And he
because,
knows
yes, there's polling that shows that there is a percentage
So
of
what we
Republicans
can
who
do
won't
is,
vote for Trump.
just
They say they won't vote for Trump.
run a little
Now that he's a
rampant
convicted
in his
felon,
eco
we're seeing the vast majority of the GOP in a
and hope for
frenzy
the best.
repeating Trump talking points, really trying to
probably
create an echo chamber about how unfair this verdict was.
something
Now,
about
let's see what Democrats do. We knew the president, that was the right thing to do, most people believe. His first remarks simply about we need to respect the process. But now what do fellow
that's a lot of
Democrats do? What does the campaign do? Eventually, what does the president himself do in terms of driving home this conviction as example of why Donald Trump is not fit for office? So now let's turn to the legal part of this and bring in former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Lisa, I hope you've had a chance to catch your breath after such a frenzied stretch. And we are a couple days out from the verdict now. Any sort of additional reactions now that you've had time to sit with this as to how it went down, and give us your latest thoughts as to what the prosecution may seek in terms of penalty?
Let's start there. I think that the prosecution, notwithstanding Donald Trump's efforts to say that the people won't stand for his serving any jail time, I would be very surprised if the Manhattan DA's office doesn't seek some form of jail time here. And the reason is for two reasons, John. One is the severity of the conduct. We're talking about 34 counts, each of which could be punished by up to 4 years. Of course, they're not going to seek 4 years for each of these counts. Rather, they've asked for some
Why
sort
are
of
you guys just
concurrent
walking
sentence
into
where
it?
they're all grouped together. But it's hard for me to imagine that given the multiplicity of counts here, they're not going to seek some jail time. The other major factor, however, is the lack of remorse shown by the defendant. Not only do we have a defendant who's already been found in criminal contempt 10 times, but he continues to say things about the verdict, about the process, about participants in the process who are covered by the gag order in theoretical violations of that gag order that haven't been brought to Justice Merchan's attention. That could be a part of any sentencing procedure. When he goes out and says, for example, that this is all a Biden administration-led cabal because one of the prosecutors here happened to have served in the Biden Department of Justice. That's the only connection at all that they can draw. That is a person who shows no remorse. A person who says the process is rigged, that the judge is corrupt, that the district attorney didn't want to bring this case but only did so under political pressure. That is a person who doesn't believe that they did anything wrong,
my goodness.
as he continues to say, and I expect that to play a major factor in his
I know I probably lost a lot of
Lisa,
viewers on that. I'm sorry.
One of the questions that
still
I've
struggling
had is,
with
obviously we have no precedent for a former sitting president
defeat. Where's victory?
to be
Where's victory, damn it?
convicted of a felony on 34
Sweet,
counts.
sweet victory.
At the same time, if you're the judge, Judge Merchan must be thinking, okay, I have to look at precedent in terms of sentencing. What is fair? And so are there high-profile cases that you think we may be looking at? Are there other examples
honestly,
that we can
if he
look to
didn't
say,
play
well,
as aggressive,
what would
if he
be
didn't
fair?
play defensive,
There's
I don't
no
know.
precedent. We're just kind of running.
I don't know.
Judge Merchan is a person who historically has not been particularly lenient with white-collar defenders. It is also not the case, despite what Trump and his allies continue to say, that falsification of business records as a felony is not a traditionally prosecuted crime in Manhattan. In
So
fact,
on that note, let's quit the stream because I won.
What might be novel here is the combination of falsification of business records and an election law conspiracy under state law.
We can do some politics again.
17152.
Because I wasn't trying to do an MSNBC
nobody had any
stream
idea
here.
of what I was being accused of. That's not true at all. But again,
okay, I was gonna say, did XSplit just freeze on me? Let's do something just fun. Let's do something fun. Game designer hates gamers. Let's do right there. Let's do fun. Let's do fun. That's not
enough
fun.
to make a difference in
That's
this election.
imperialism with charisma.
Cool. How y'all doing? Everybody good? Oh, sweet. This has been a terrifying night so far for me.
How are you gonna follow that up?
Oh, how am I gonna follow her? Oh, no, just kidding. What? No, you wanted to talk, so I'm just giving you the floor. Yeah.
I'm not.
You sure? No, you just made it weird for everyone. Do you do this all the time? Is this your job? Did I fuck up? I'm sorry. You usually just go to places and make it weird? Do you knock on windows during people's sex? Just, hey, how you gonna follow her ex? What the fuck? Like I said, nothing but weird stuff has happened to me tonight. It is been completely jarring. Because a lot of people are celebrating Halloween tonight, which in New York is a horrible idea. This city is not made for Halloween because it is too difficult to distinguish the people celebrating and the real crackheads. That's, you know what I mean? I be letting people get close. You asking questions, is devastating. I saw a dude with, I don't know what's outfits and what's not. I saw a dude with pants but just one leg. He had a pant. Like an actual, you see what I mean, right? One leg naked and the other leg business casual, right? One side I'm going somewhere, one side booty shorts. It's insane. Half of him is dressed for the apocalypse and the rest is present day. And he was just acting like it was nothing. I was like, maybe it's a choice. I have no idea. I saw one dude who was just in pajamas, but he didn't have any socks or shoes on, and he was by himself sucking his thumb. I was like, I think that this one is crazy. Am I crazy? That one feels different. He not hanging out with anybody, you know what I mean? If him and his boys were all sucking thumbs together, I'd be like, all right, they a group of oddballs. But my man just by himself going, when the train coming?
It was a well-fought battle, though.
No.
That was the.
There was a guy
and while
who
you guys
sat
are
next to
watching
me
this,
while I was on the
I'm
train.
going to make dinner because now
So
that
he
my
has,
brain
like,
has stopped thinking very
this,
hard.
Blood thing, across the forehead, and it's trickling down and stuff. And he starts the conversation
my body's
just
like, hey,
normal,
by the way,
and he
you
was
need to eat
asking,
more
he was
on.
asking me to make sure
Give me a
he was
second.
on the way to 34th Street, right? And it's Halloween, so it's supposed to be okay for someone who's covered in blood to just ask you for directions. It's I would be weird if I was like, oh, because then that's me not understanding it's a holiday, right? And then, and so I tell them, like, yeah, we're on the way. We're headed into the city, so you're going to hit 34th Street if you just stay on a few more stops. And by the way, I think that this is so cool. Like, I've never seen anybody get it that detailed. And he was like, oh, no, I'm going as Jim Halper. This is, I got in a fight with a nigga on the way to the train. I was like, all right, if you say so. That's my thing. I think my only way of telling, which maybe this isn't fair, but my only way of telling who's crazy and who's in costume is by the number of costumes. So if somebody in one costume, that's a regular person. You know what I mean? If somebody's in two costumes at the same time, that's a kid. That's a kid who couldn't make up his mind. He's like, I want to be Batman and Elsa. It's like, all right, cool, yeah. That's okay. All right, we'll get you half Batman, like Batman up top, Elsa bottom, I guess. I don't know. But if they're wearing 7, that is mental illness. That's happening the rest of the year, too. You know what I mean? If they look like Spider-Man and they just got fairy wings on the back of their head and they got Thanos wrists, it's like, all right, you're doing a lot. Just watch them. Oh. This is also the worst night in New York to get robbed. Because it's the one night where you could give the most accurate description that make you sound crazy. You know what I mean? You know, if I got robbed tonight, I was like, okay, so Minnie Mouse and Captain America went that way, all right? If you turn the corner, you can still catch them.
This is how we made our work flow better than ever with Monday.com. It gave our team...
I had a conversation with my uncle. My uncle got in an argument with his girlfriend. My uncle still has girlfriends because he didn't have his life together. So I'm just saying, my man needs to settle down or settle up, you know? Like, it's odd. But they got an argument because they were watching a movie. And in the movie, the couple that the movie is about, towards the end of the movie, they've been married for 60 years, and then she dies. And then within a week, he dies. But he didn't have any pre-existing conditions, so he just died of old age and clearly of grief, right? Right?
Is this the movie Up?
She did the same thing. She turns to my uncle, and she's like, oh, that's so sweet. Do you think that'll happen with us? And then my uncle was like, hell no. Which I'm like, first of all, just say yes, bro. Like, just... My uncle be picking the weirdest times, to be honest. Like, that's so odd. Just say yes. That's what people are looking for. Reassurance. Say yes. Is a clear answer. Is also, you know, just say yes. You know. But then they got in a fight because then she was like, why don't you think you would die if I died? And then he was like, look, if you died, I'd be sad. But if a week passed, I'm not gonna kill myself just to like stay in the timeline. And then she's like, well, why don't you love me enough to just die after I die? Like, she turned into like a real fight. And he was like, look, first of all, this conversation doesn't make any sense because I'm clearly gonna die before you, okay? I'm overweight, I got high blood pressure. So let me ask you this, are you willing to kill yourself in 8 years?
I think on that note, I don't know how many people are still with me today. I am not good enough to play Age of Empires and interact with chat. I couldn't even pay attention to the damn video. I will say, an effective counter strategy to onagers is using Imperial upgrades on your light cavalry. Thank you, Ocean. So I'm just signing off, right? I'm having dinner. It's getting dark. It's 4th of July. I get it. I'm not important. Go spend time with your family. But as we sign off, I just want to say, Age of Empires 2, the best way to counter onagers is with light cavalry. Obviously, I should have tried going to Hussar, but I was like, oh, too late. And light cavalry was plenty enough because they were fully upgraded. And they took 6 pierce damage reduction, and they were doing enough damage to the onagers as a meat shield. And once you get close to the onagers, it can't hurt you, right? And if you notice, the pike group couldn't do anything either because my cav archers were decimating them. And that's what I was trying to get to happen this entire match with Homeboy. And it was a struggle because obviously he was ready for it. So that time he wasn't ready for it. That time I went on the offensive. His pikemen were still chasing, trying to get to it. I was able to launch my light calves, take out the onagers, and then safely pick off the pikemen as they came through, readily sacrificing my light cavalry because, again, they're just food. So, when it comes to trash wars, you obviously want to keep some amount of gold units, but if you can't, your light cavalry can do some damage. They can absolutely do some damage. And if they outnumber the pikemen, they can also murder the pikemen before they can kill your light cap. On that note, thank you for coming to the stream. Happy 4th of July, as much as that can be said. We had a very heavy stream today, so I hope the levity with Josh Johnson helped a little bit. Where was he? I think he was right here. So I hope the levity here helped out a little bit, and I also hope that you guys enjoyed watching the stream. I forgot to be presidential. It's like, I will provide housing for all. Yeah, I gotta get if I can make it through the Dark Ages without struggling, then we can start playing those games. So I'm gonna finish my dinner. Y'all are gonna have fun on 4th of July. Be safe, and we will see you tomorrow at 4.